भी है, बड़े अपने आप को
Hi, Sakshi. Unmute. I think you're. We are working on it. Hi, Seema. How are you?
How are you?
I'm
We're
good.
not
Are you able to hear me well and see? Oh, fantastic.
Can you hear
We're
me?
just waiting for Abhigya.
Yeah.
And we'll begin. But thank you so much for joining, taking the time out.
Pleasure.
We already have questions coming in.
As always, women have
from a very enthusiastic
questions. Yeah.
Audience.
Yes, good.
I know. It's been such a long time, Seema, that
I know. I mean, I do follow your work, but it's a different thing to kind of meet up and talk. And but we should catch up.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Dakshita. Am I audible to you?
Yes. Am I?
Hi. So I am handing over the call to Mr. Abhigyan Prakash. So you can continue.
Wonderful.
Hi, is it okay?
Hi, Abhigyan. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Good?
Bilkul. Abhi, I think Kapish is going to just I think, center you in the screen.
Just 1 second. Just push the light a little further. I'll have to close the further.
Can you hear me now, Nilima?
Yeah. Sakshi, hi.
Hi.
Earplug.
Thank you. You're in Bengal, right?
I'm just trying to wear the earplugs. I can put the phone in some
No,
position.
take your time. Great. So, okay, we are going to start and begin with a video and see you on the other side of that. Good afternoon and welcome to the second Rate the Debate conference. This is part of the Media Mutinies conference series where we focus on the trends that define journalism and democracy in India. One such trend, one such media mutiny is being led by women in journalism today. Women in India are only conditionally visible to the society, to the government, and even to their own families. What is conditional visibility? Their visibility is subject to the women being obedient to the rules and the structures designed to subjugate them. Their time, their energy, their life, even their imagination serve as resources for the more powerful segments of the society. Their exploitation is justified by tradition, by law, even by birth. Women who submit to the exploitation are praised for their forbearance, for their sacrifice, for their kindness, and their forgiveness. Not only they are the upholders of honor and virtue, they are also fully responsible for any loss of stature they may suffer. Therefore, women, in many different ways, are incentivized to remain invisible. It should not have been easy for any individual, government, or society to get away with such exploitation of one half of the population. Why didn't the women rise up in revolt? Where are the revolutions led by women which demanded freedom, which demanded visibility? Why haven't the women across history leave the unequal spaces and rebel against the unequal laws?
Okay.
The silence of the woman reveals the extent of her subjugation and the power of those who control her. It also reveals that the world cannot be equal, at least not without a fight. The few such fights are the moments that have led to political rights like equal voting, equal representation, but these have come only after the woman voter demonstrated that she has a mind of her own. It was a small success and not often repeated in other fields. For instance, the fight for equal pay in India must begin with rural India, where women are regularly and routinely paid less than men working in agricultural activities. The list of the battles of the contemporary woman is long. Equal opportunity, entrepreneurship, finance, property, legal rights, property rights, education, health, even nutrition. Women live without these rights and also without respect, security, and fair play. Every day, women fall prey while they are going home from work or going to college to study or even just staying at home. No government has ever promised that it would resign from power if there is even one more rape in India. No election was fought on the assurance that there will be action taken against administrators if they discriminate against women in jobs, in loans, in seats. No social boycott has ever happened of families that take dowry, or those who don't allow their daughters to study, or those who don't allow their daughters to return home if their marriages fail. The freedom movement, it appears to me, had only freed one half of the population from colonization. The other half, the women, are yet to be free. There is no point in referring to the constitution and the laws because those who are supposed to uphold these rights prefer patriarchy over emancipation of women. That is why I have said and written before that India is half democracy, where one half of the population is exploited by the other half. The silence of the woman is different from any other kind of silence. It is the kind where even when they speak, they're not heard by anyone, especially the media. Let me give you some statistics. Every eligible media organization sends names for recognition of with the Government of India and accreditation. According to these numbers, there are 158 editors registered with the Press Information Bureau, of which only 26 are women editors. These figures are 2020 though, so they are pretty recent. Then of the total 1,499 correspondents, only 232 correspondents are women. It is clear how many media organizations have women in crucial decision-making positions or even in positions where they can decide how news is covered. The exclusion of women at the top in media has a serious impact on how gender battles are perceived on the ground and how the audience understands them. A few factors why this exclusion happens. One, the top positions of media houses are usually business positions and are occupied by those who run the business of news. Men outnumber women in this segment basically because of the traditional control over finances. Two, the editorial decision makers are collaborators in profit making, and women are outliers in this. Three, the coverage of news must fit the larger scheme dictated by business, where gender topics are seen as soft issues. Four, and most importantly, women are associated with silence even in some workplaces. Their voice must remain so low so that it can be neglected. A woman who must be heard is dangerous for regressive organizations, just as she is for regressive societies. Mainstream media has traditionally, and as a habit, pushed out women from hierarchies. We will discuss how in one of the sessions today. Women were forced to occupy non-mainstream spaces like digital media and have excelled. We will discuss how digital has become the new mainstream in another session. And when women cover historic events like farmers' protests, they bring the perspective that can only be understood by the exploited and those who fight back. We will discuss that too in another session, this conference. In the end, and once again, let me welcome you all to this Media Mutinies Conference series by Rate the Debate, ahead of the International Women's Day. Rate the Debate has, for the past 7 months, developed research-based structures which will help reform Indian media, including the Media Trial Index, the Anchor Report Cards, and Anchor Language Analysis. In this conference, I hope we chart the course towards making media more inclusive and responsive to women. As the brilliant speakers of this conference show, in the imagining of a better world and a better India, there is no difference between a man and a woman. After all, one half of every person is a woman. And until every woman is happy and is free, no one is happy, no one is free. Now let me conclude here. May I now request my colleague and an important member of Rate the Debate, Mr. Aaron Mirza, to introduce the panel for session 1. The discussion will be simultaneously available and live streaming through Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. The recordings will be available on all Rate the Debate social media platforms. In the audience, we are joined by students, media persons, lawyers, academicians, among others. The conversation can be bilingual, and I shall leave it to the panelists to decide. Thank you and enjoy the conference. Over to you, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kota Nilima. I think you highlighted the essence of why we are doing this conference and how it is significantly important for all of us who are present here as panelists, as organizers, or even as the audience. It is a matter of pride and privilege for me to be introducing today's distinguished panel of session 1 of the Rate the Debate Media Mutinies Conference Series. The theme of this conference is Role of Women and New Journalism. In the first panel, we would largely be dealing with women in digital media beyond glass ceilings. In this panel, we are joined by Mr. Abhigyan Prakash, who is a national icon and a change leader. In the times of intense media criticism, when television news is accused of sensationalism and agenda, Abhigyan is widely known and respected as a differentiator with class, credibility, and trust. Currently, he is the senior editorial consultant of ABP Network, its national expert and creator of a critically acclaimed show, Parivartan. Abhigyan has received the President Medal and was also among the top 100 young achievers declared by the Society magazine. On behalf of the Rate the Debate team, it is a matter of great pride and privilege for us to be welcoming you, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I would also love to take the opportunity of welcoming Sakshi Joshi. Sakshi Joshi has started her career from a regional channel and has been associated with BBC, Network 18, India TV, and News 24 in the past. Recently, Sakshi quit the mainstream media and started her own digital platform on YouTube and Facebook. Sakshi feels more liberated in terms of choice of stories, gets to do the kind of journalism she wanted to do. She has covered farmers' agitation to student issues. Sakshi believes very soon digital journalism will take over mainstream news if mainstream news continues bending in front of the establishment. Thank you very much, Sakshi ma'am, for being a part of this panel amidst your busy schedule wherein you're covering the elections in Bengal. We genuinely appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you. And I really love being here for the second time now. Thank you, Kota Nilima.
Pleasure's all ours, ma'am. Thank you so much. I take immense pleasure and privilege in welcoming another stalwart who's amidst us, Seema Chishti ma'am. Seema Chishti ma'am is a writer-journalist based in Delhi. She's been a multimedia journalist, having worked in print, radio, and television in English and in Hindi since 1990. Seema ma'am was the editor in Delhi for BBC and the deputy editor for the Indian Express. She's the co-author of the book, Note by Note, The India Story, 1947 to 2017, which is a history of independent India from 1947 to 2017, told alongside the sound of Hindi film music for each of the years. Her endeavor remains to tease out, untie, and then help interpret the many strands of change in a large and diverse country like India. Ma'am, it is indeed a matter of privilege for us to have you amidst us. Thank you very much for very gracefully accepting our invitation to be a part of this panel.
Thank you, Arun, and thank you, Nilima, for thinking of me.
I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce the thematic question of this session, subsequent to which I'll be handing over the session to Abhigyan sir to begin the session. So the thematic question that we have for this session, which would last until 2 o'clock, where the last 10 minutes would be reserved for question and answers from the audience, is as follows. Women in digital media beyond glass ceilings. Mainstream media, by excluding women from powerful roles, has pushed them to the digital space where they have excelled. And now, digital is the new mainstream. With this as our thematic premise, I now open the floor to Abhigyan sir, Seema ma'am, and Sakshi ma'am to take forward the group discussion. Thank you.
Can I start? Thank you so much. Heartfelt thanks. And something I've said always in my life, and I maintain it. It's been years, nothing to do with journalism or any other walk of life. Women are superior to men. So men somehow just fail to understand that. So I think this is gone for too long now. There's space, whatever. That'll all naturally happen. It's happening. But they are basically very superior to men. So let's first accept that and then move on to any walk of life, any work in life, and appreciate them, compliment them, and enjoy working for them. There's no need to look any other which way. I personally, because I've been associated with an organization for a very long time, so where I've seen really women excel. So when Kota ji read out the numbers, it was very disappointing, but I've also seen, and it's so proud moment for all of us in any walk of life, as I said, for women to do well. They need to do much better. A lot of people say that, but I really don't draw any comparators because I simply know and understand this. Yes, as in when they get an opportunity, they are faster to outsmart and outdo men at their work. Two very important points I'd want to quickly start, and then I'll be waiting to listen to old reporter friend Seema Chishti, and of course Sakshi, whose work I see on social media very actively. Thank God, social media is the new mainstream media versus digital. I think these lines are going to get blurred further very soon. I traveled across Uttar Pradesh in 2019 elections for almost 3.5 months and did a digital series, while I was doing a little bit with television as well. And I understood the impact of it. So you will also can understand the impact of it, which is why the government is so now worried that, how do we also control this? Because digital essentially is worldwide creating a space of cross communication, and wherein lot of new perspectives are coming in. Television has almost now occupied a space shamelessly and very sadly, where it is, I will tell you and you listen to me, period. So there's no way, I don't care about your views. And that I used to joke with a lot of people recently. I think some television channel toyed with the idea of spokesperson becoming anchors. I think time has come. Anchors can go and campaign for their political parties. Your mail said rate the debate. I got very curious because the first thing I wanted to know that where is the debate? So nowadays in television, when you have a system where there are 4 windows, out of which there are 2 anchor shows now, essentially. One is the anchor from the ruling side, and one is the spokesperson from the ruling side. And there is also one journalist, so-called, in this category I'll also be pushed by people in criticism, who's some sort of a senior journalist. So, which often makes me feel when you're out of work, you're called senior journalist on TV, Varish Patrakar. So this Varish Patrakar is also mainly representing one side. Now the combination is largely of the ruling side because they are dominant in television at the moment, and we all know that now. These are not new things I'm telling any one of you. So out of 4 people, 3 are on one side. You understand, Kotaji? So I don't know how are you managing to rate the debate, because I frankly want to know where is the debate for you to rate it. So all of a sudden, digital opens up a new space of cross communication. I'll also get you multiple views. I'll also get you other views, and you don't have to sit and watch a 1 hour. Actually, it's not a program. It's also very factually nowadays incorrect to say. You watch 1 hour of advertisements in which news comes in the form of some screechy, streamy, so-called debate in between. So it's 1 hour of a news wheel, supposedly, but it's actually 1 hour of an advertising wheel, in which we all know the television time calculation. I'm sure Sakshi ji also knows about it. So whatever little time you get out of the 1 hour wheel of advertising, you also do that in the form of debate. Second point, I'm becoming more and more clear of it, and I'm very happy about it, always been. I don't think much of a distinction now needs to be made or discussed. I really see such brilliant reportage I've seen over the years from female colleagues in this profession, both in terms of writing, both in terms of reporting, also hosting, also presenting. So I really don't know. Yes, the hierarchy systems are still not in the right place because, as we know, salesmen become CEOs, sales guys end up. Very good point, Kotaji, you mentioned, because it's all eventually linked to economic. How much money can you get for the organization and run it? But there are also women CEOs. So we need to celebrate that as well. As far as newsroom politics is concerned, we all know how those who've never done journalism in their life or reporting in their life or gone to any front lines or gone to any big Kisan protests like Sakshi Joshi recently did, they end up being editors and they actually tell reporters what to do and how to do. And also not just that, they also tell the reporters what editorial lines to take because they spend more time in the organization playing better news organization politics. So they are very, they're better equipped to kill a journalist. It doesn't matter whether you're a male or female. So these people naturally have risen faster. They've risen much higher. They've played much better newsroom politics. And as and when needed, sabotage people's careers. So this also, again, I see no distinction here. To be very bluntly honest, they do it to everyone. But despite all that, there is, yes, a lot of input that is coming out, which I feel brilliant. Just to conclude, I have to finish a book for HarperCollins probably by the end of this year on Uttar Pradesh because the elections are there early next year. And so much research I'm going through. Yes, it's so true that when you read a piece written by a lady journalist or a female reporter, in fact, I'm feeling very uncomfortable in saying all this because I make no more, for me, there's no distinction. They're just absolutely brilliant. So I don't even see how do I put it across. So yes, there is a new perspective to it always. You know, there's always a new way of looking at it. There's also always a new way of also looking at events or politics or day-to-day politics. Women have done so brilliantly well in Indian politics. Obviously, their way of looking at things could also be very different. I think time has come, my humble submission and request. I don't know, I don't like the words glass ceiling, and I think this is done brilliantly well. Far, far better. I'm absolutely certain they will do, and they do add a new dimension. So I'm not very comfortable, I beg your pardon, but I'm not very comfortable still to go on with this, you know, women, and yes, there are problems, but they've really outdone themselves in a lot of ways and faced those problems and yet risen to positions, yet fought for their positions, and yet also proven time and again that there's no differentiator, if so, whatever. That's my opening comments.
Thank you, Abhigyan. That was a wide and a very deep look at journalism, the way we are looking at today, from the past and where it's probably going. May I get Sakshi's view on this? Are we differentiating in a way that it is not doing justice to the excellence of the women reporting and the kind of struggles they have put up? I must say that we, every one of us who has been associated with the media, are here because of the struggles the earlier generation of women journalists have put up and the path they have shown. So how do you see, Sakshiji, that struggle? Is it still continuing? Has it got easier? And is it necessary to look at women journalists separately? As Abhigyanji so well put, there is a separate perspective in which I think women look at every issue, including the farmers' protest, on which we have a session later in the day. So your views, please.
Yeah, I do agree, Nilima, that women do, look at certain things with different perspective. But I don't like the feeling, the way people look at women journalists. I mean, this particular term, like women journalists, this is what really makes me feel really sad and unfortunate. Because a journalist is a journalist, just like a journalist doesn't
Yeah.
have a religion, just like
Yeah.
a journalist doesn't have a caste. Why does a journalist have a gender? एक ये महिला पत्रकार मुझे तो इससे सुनने में ही आपत्ति होती है. So people start rating that, so many women journalists are doing this. अबे यार आप हमको प्लीज सभी के साथ रेट कर दो प्लीज. आप हमको एक साथ ही बोल दो कि जी सबके साथ आप मुझे भले ही आप 10th पोजीशन पे ला दो, but my competition should not be only with the women but also with the other people in the same fraternity. मुझे ये पूरी बात ही अजीब लगती है, जिसको अभिज्ञान जी ने भी अभी मेंशन किया. सीरियसली वो बहुत ही हर्ट करता है. सीमा जी वुड आल्सो एग्री विद दैट. उन्होंने इतना काम किया है. सीमा जी इज अ वेरी ओल्ड नेम, हमारी सीनियर हैं. हर जगह मैं बीबीसी में गई तो मैं वहां पर इनका नाम सुनती आई हूँ. लेकिन she would also agree with one thing, that everywhere challenges might have changed their faces, but every time we have a different challenge, and every time a woman always has to prove herself. I don't know what for. आप अगर किसी चैनल में काम कर रहे हैं even for like 10 years, still you will always have to prove yourself against any male member who is your counterpart, right? I don't understand why. People will start looking at your age. People will start looking at your hair, graying. People will start looking at your wrinkles, your body figure, your makeup and everything. They don't look at that when it comes to a man. And the basic terminology that is being used, even if I'm reporting something and the other person is not liking my reporting, that's okay. And the other person is not agreeing with my style of reporting, that's okay. But he will not be commenting on the facts or on my report. He will only be noticing how many gray hair I have, or he will just start just addressing me like auntie. So auntie is a word that he will start using for a woman, just to malign her, just to make her feel कि उसको बहुत बुरा लग रहा है. So I would just like to make it very clear to people, listen, it doesn't hurt us anymore now. हम लोग बहुत आगे हो चुके हैं उससे. We've actually crossed that glass ceiling that you're talking about. We actually laugh at this. And we love showing our gray hair to you. We love showing it. And it's up to me whether I want to do a makeup or I don't want to do it. Nobody is going to judge me on that. So the issue is that मेरी reporting, my work is not judged. But how the way I look, have I gone fat, or have I lost weight, or do I have a gray hair in my in my pictures, or wherever I'm reporting? All that is that is what really matters to people. That is what I think challenge is today for us. Yeah. Earlier, Nilima ji, let me be very honest. I've always had male counterparts or even seniors, bosses who always respected and given that space that a woman should get. I have never had that, experience where I would say कि मुझे आगे नहीं बढ़ने दिया या मुझे रोक दिया गया. कभी-कभार yes, I do feel कि हाँ हो सकता है had I been a man or had I been a guy, I would have been given more chances. But then that's okay. I'm okay with it, whatever I've done, because I think that I have always made space for myself. I've always thought that, okay, now my growth is very limited here, so I have another choices and I should just go ahead. But the thing is that why am I not allowed to go and cover farmers' protest only because you feel that a woman can't go there, or maybe she will give a different perspective to the whole thing, which we can't, because I've seen that women, somehow we are not ready to listen to the editorial line. I don't know why is it so. Maybe we are born rebellions or what, but we are not ready to listen to any instructions given to us. We will only go see, report what we see. That is it. Nobody can just tell us that what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. So let me be very honest. Had I been into mainstream, news media right now, I wouldn't have been able to cover farmers' protests, and I wouldn't have been sitting here in Kolkata and West Bengal covering the elections. I'm very confident about this. I wouldn't have been sent because they know that whatever line they're going to tell me or ask me to cover, I will not be doing that. I will be doing whatever I'm seeing. So this is something I really feel that every time I have been snatched away from those chances, yes, but I have no regrets. because I've got to learn a lot also from the people around me, from whatever experiences I've had. And whenever I thought that my growth has been limited, I've always crossed that, and I've just, made my own path. So I'm happy. I'm just happy in these 16 years of my career. And I have no issues being a woman, and I don't have any kind of challenges to face, because मुझे लगता है वो सारी चीजें have just, since the time you're born, Nilima ji, you will also agree, and Seema ji will also agree. I'm so sorry, Amikyanchi, you can only, experience through our words. But because we have felt that in every walk of life, be it, in your family, or be it with your relatives or anybody, they will always doubt you. They will always suspect you, whether you will be able to flourish or not, whether you will be able to succeed or not. They are always doubtful. And this is what really makes us so happy, that we always try to prove them wrong. So this is my whole idea. I just want to prove the world wrong every time. So Wonderful. This is what I live on.
Wonderful. Beautifully put, Sakshi ji, as always. So well put. Seema, I think you bring with you a wide range of experiences from different sides of media. Now, one of the things which Sakshi said, and it really is so true, and what Abhigyanji also said, is about the doubt, about whether women will succeed or not. One, I wanted to really get your thoughts on that. The second thing is...
No, I have never had doubts.
No, not you.
I'm completely of the opinion that there's no need even to make any this. Sakshi is so true. I love listening to her right now. There's no need. No need. I think all that is over now.
That's what I was saying. That that assertion, that confidence has to come from the way we have, the way women have covered various issues across the history of India. So that confidence has to come. But Sakshi is also right that there is a societal suspicion. There's a doubt which is inbuilt into not just the society, but also into a woman's mind, that are we going to succeed or not? It's wonderful when that is taken as an inspiration, sort of, to go forward. But in some cases, maybe it can also hold back a woman. Now, that's where I thought I'll get Seema ji's view, because one of the things which I also wanted to know was about this woman, Mahila Patrikar. Why is she a target more than anyone else? This Mahila Patrikar gets trolled more. She gets, there are personal, comments about her more. Her points of view, as Sakshi so correctly said, is always surrounded by some suspicion that, is it completely right? Is this going to be in tune with our policies in media organization? Why is that, Seema?
So it was a delight listening to Abhigyan and Sakshi. Nilima, you two, a bit like time travel, actually, going back to waters and breaking our footwear and getting a headache, covering early 90s and the 2000s. So I want to just pull away from this and maybe be a bit of a contrarian on this, because while I'm a big fan, and I hate it, I don't even self-identify myself as a feminist. And I think that, writing, journalism is something where women have been, even historically, have had space, have been able to kind of assert themselves and all, but tragically haven't. So I'm interested in the questions of what is it in our society and our politics that actually makes it an issue. And I'll just go on a lighter note, which is actually not very light, but Sakshi very rightly mentioned gray hair a lot of times. Do you know, internationally, this is like a huge issue, that women anchors will not really be allowed silver hair. Men are welcomed, you're wise and intelligent. Women are possibly menopausal and over the hill. So off you go. So you have to kind of be you need to cover up and, put Nerolac on your hair. So there was this whole debate there, and this historian called Mary Beard, she led that debate on the BBC, and they got women anchors to come in with silver wigs and hold the debate and see the difference in how people felt. And so this is these are very serious issues of appearance, of which frame women, which try and Barbie dollize them and fit them into spaces. I want to look at, of course, so Indian Express isn't like that, BBC isn't like that, the NDTV isn't like that, places where Sakshi has worked are probably not like that, we assume. But there are still huge structural issues which make it tougher for women to just get ahead. There was this other remark also, that why are women who are prominent in journalism, why are they so good? They are so good. Well, they have to be very good to be able to get there. So the kind of fight that they've had to wage so much of weeding out has happened that they had to be startlingly good to get where we got. So I think this kind of glass ceiling, sometimes a concrete ceiling, and sometimes a very pakka anarkali type diwars do exist. And we must reconcile, must recognize that. These structural issues have been with us forever and ever. They've very much been there in mainstream media. There was a very interesting report I want to draw your attention to. This is out in 2019. It was done by UN Women and Media Rumble, called Gender Inequality in India's Media. It came as a huge surprise to me too. There are no women in leadership positions in 6 English and 7 Hindi newspapers surveyed till March 2019. In magazines, things are slightly better. It's 13.6%. Television is 20.9%. Digital is good. It's 26.3%. Good given the low it is in print. Opinion pages, it's appalling. In terms of national security and defense, more than 90% is men writers. On gender issues, you find 3% of what this organization found gender issues found mention, and the portrayal of women and issues highly minimal. So I think from a world of the structured mainstream world, this kind of move to digital, no doubt, it is more. And as Abhigyan very rightly put it, given the government's attention to it, everybody in digital should be very flattered, that so much of attention and thought digital space, which clearly means we matter and there is a lot of importance in this space. Of course, because that's a hungry beast, it needs to be fed continuously. So women, you need good talent, and it's like sports and music, that if you're good, it'll show. So digital has that element of you stand up, you jump out, and you're there 24/7. It's largely unrestricted. It doesn't have the kind of barriers that mainstream media has. What worries me right now, and which is where I want to draw this discussion, is the kind of, so I would like to believe that there's no difference between men and women and digital, we're all free, we're all cool, etc. I don't find that to be the case now. And what I worry about is this kind of trolling, the sexual online abuse, the kind of stuff that Swati Chaturvedi, one senior journalist, Varish Patrakar, wrote about the whole troll factory, the IT cell. What worries me is about the gendered abuse that women get. Maa behan galis are routine. Their looks are commented upon. They are told, people like any voices, whether you have, even Rana Ayub having pornography put out so coolly, which is not to say that just the Janta is doing it. But I want people in power. I wonder at the kind of politics that is allowing this to happen. So what worries me is that patriarchy is very deeply ingrained in a lot of the politics that is dominant today. So even if there will be women who will be talking about it, but it's like this whole mother-in-law syndrome that you say, ki bhai, lekin saas mein bahu ko jala diya. Because, very often it's not enough to just be represented, but you operate your patriarchy through women in those positions. So I worry about the kind of politics that does not say enough is enough. So I would want people to not be followed by prominent leaders. I don't want those trolls, people who give rape threats, death threats, etc., to women with a very, very sexualized hate angle. So what worries me is the kind of the zeitgeist, the spirit of the times, which is now even getting into digital. So for reasons of the pandemic, for a whole lot of other reasons, there has been an overt kind of movement towards digital. So if now even in digital, you're going to have structural reasons plus other reasons of politics that promote patriarchy, that promote hate, which want women to be in their place. Ki aap apni jagah pe rahe, ya aap fashion discuss kare, the so-called softer issues. You talk soft, we won't discuss your issues, and it's okay. You agree with us, then you're fine. So I think we're positioned at a fairly dangerous space where it's not just structural issues, but the new politics, which is dominant, which is very aggressive, which wants to put several people in their space. And women are one. So I agree. Not just a Mahila Patrakar, I'm a Patrakar in I have a caste, I have a religion, I have a non-religion, I have an economic status. But I think all of that is now beginning to bite in this whole silencing business we're seeing. And women are very likely to get hit the hardest because all the other you get massive gender abuse, which can be very, very, it can be very unnerving. I think it would be very difficult if I was a 25-year-old in today's time.
I totally agree. I think you bring
it to something.
Yeah, very important point, especially on the digital space and the kind of personalization which happens against women. Yes, Abhigyan, you were saying.
Yeah, totally. Everyone has to be in the same voice on this issue, as Seema saying. I'll just explain it to you with a lot of my traveling in the last few years, and particularly to small places all across UP. You know what is happening and why it is so disturbing what Seema is saying is literally जैसे मोहल्ले में होता था कि लड़के खड़े होकर कोई लड़की निकलती थी तो बदतमीजी करते थे या सीटी बजाते थे या उसको छेड़ने की कोशिश करते थे, जिसके खिलाफ स्वाभाविक इस मुल्क में आजाद देश है, इसमें कानून बने हैं, उसको इन लोगों ने किसी न किसी तरह के बढ़ावा पाकर, किसी न किसी तरह का सर पे हाथ आकर इन लोगों ने उसको सोशल मीडिया पे ले आया है वो बिहेवियर को।
जी बिल्कुल।
एंड विच इज स्टार्टलिंग। और उसके खिलाफ मैं तो मतलब आई एम हार्डली एक्टिव ऑन ट्विटर, मुझे तो समझ में नहीं आता कि वहां पर इसका इस्तेमाल क्या हो रहा है। तो इतनी बुरी तरह से टारगेट करने की कोशिश करते हैं कि वो उन मोहल्लों के सीन से भी कहीं ज्यादा गंदा बनाने की कोशिश करते हैं। और सच में सीमा सो ट्रू, मुझे कोई इफेक्टिव रोक उसकी अभी तक नहीं नजर आती। बहुत इत्मीनान से किया जाता है and they just get away from being individual, from being abusive, from really putting someone down. You know, at least पुराने जमाने में गली मोहल्ले में कोई बड़े बुजुर्ग भी होते थे, 4 चाचा ताऊ होते थे जो घर से निकल कर आते थे, ये भाई क्या बदतमीजी कर रहे हो। ट्विटर पे तो वो भी नहीं अवेलेबल है। ट्विटर पे तो जो चाचा ताऊ
अभिज्ञान जी कम से कम उनके चेहरे तो थे, कम से कम वो सामने तो छेड़ते थे। ये तो सब फेसलेस हैं। They don't even have the guts to come and say उनका चेहरा क्या दिखता है, उनकी आइडेंटिटी क्या है। वो तो फिर भी मुझे लगता है रिस्पेक्ट कर रहे होंगे लोग।
साक्षी जी, if we go on this, then someone might say कि डिजिटल स्पेस को फिर रेस्ट्रिक्ट करिए, फिर उस पे रूल्स बनाइए ताकि ये सारे नहीं हो। तो वहाँ होगा क्या कि हो सकता है these kind of elements don't get controlled, but the free speech issue might get seriously under threat. What do you say, Sakshi?
देखिए, free speech is something different.
No,
लेकिन यहाँ पर
digital space, the restricted digital space might eventually affect that also.
See, digital पे जैसे if I am on YouTube and I'm just streaming live right now and there is a particular I do enter certain galis that I think that they will be giving me और उसको keyword की तरह मैंने डाल दिया, so वो लोग mute हो जाते हैं, उन लोगों का comment नहीं आता। I'm just saying कि ये सारी चीजें, all these digital spaces have done something about it, but it's not about controlling. It's about giving them, encouraging them. Basically, they are encouraging. The issue is कि social media पर या Twitter पर जो character assassination होता है वो बहुत targeted उन females का होता है या उन activists का होता है, उन journalists का होता है जो कि establishment को question भी कर रहे हैं। या जो because I have faced many kind of trolling. Let me be very honest, चाहे कांग्रेस हो, चाहे आम आदमी पार्टी हो, बीजेपी हो, सब हो, I have faced every kind of trolling from all these people. But let me be very honest, and I say this everywhere, the kind of trolling BJP does is just beyond any imagination. The level that they go to is like completely gutter level. Right. None of the other people do that. तो उसमें क्या होता है? I have seen this happening with me, with any other woman. So now the thing is that इन लोगों को अगर आप encourage करेंगे, मैं कह रही हूँ कोई भी ट्रोल हो, जो भी गाली देता है उसको encourage नहीं करना है, ये पार्टीज को करना चाहिए। Why don't these political parties work towards making a healthy environment? भाई आपके ट्रोल्स, मुझे आप ट्रोल करो, मुझे कोई ट्रोलिंग से प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, आप मुझे भी क्रिटिसाइज कर सकते हैं, आप मुझे फैक्ट्स पे कीजिए ना, मुझे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं। पर ये कहना, देखिए मोटी हो गई है, देखिए बाल तेरे सफेद हो रहे, मेकअप को लगा के आ जाती है, या फिर कैरेक्टर असैसिनेशन करेंगे, सॉरी, दैट इज कंप्लीटली गटर लेवल। दैट मींस यू हैव नथिंग इन योर हेड।
Yeah, we have a huge stream of questions आपके लिए भी, साक्षी जी, अभिज्ञान and सीमा जी के लिए भी। Before I get to that, before I ask Aaron to start curating the questions, Seema ji, I just wanted to ask you something about this personalization of women journalists. What you said is very right. There is a kind of a immersion of the identity of the journalist into the kind of news they are covering. And as Abhigyan ji just said about the research for his book, he's saying that when he's looking at women writing about certain issues, there is a different way of looking. So are we looking at a time ahead where, when you are reporting something, you have to remember your gender, your caste, your region, your language, everything, and then put it out there. Is that actually good? Because then you are putting it out all there in a kind of a transparent, more objective way. Or is that not how journalism should be?
Well, it's a tricky one because it can be double-edged. If everybody is going to, this is part of this whole selfie patrakarita, this selfie journey. I mean myself, I'm a part of the story, I'm part of the shot, etc. So this is a much bigger debate on how immersed should have been my story as a narrator's eye and all that. I think that is where we need to keep a bit of my clinical forensic, I'm teasing body part and I have to do with the guts and do a narration and write this piece to people. So I think that's where the whole business, I think that's where a lot of problems are coming, because if everything is all self-edited, then there's a problem. There's a problem with wretched television channels. They're all the yowling anchors are editors-in-chief. So who's going to check them? So, I think that's where maybe if there's a filter or somebody sending out maybe Dalit patrakars, women patrakars, or upper caste male patrakars, and then you try and piece it together. So the whole quilt gives you a better picture. Sure. So I think, sometimes there may be a case for putting it out there, but I'm not a fan of doing something differently because I'm Mahila. Because I'm not going to go and cover a parliament session differently because I'm Mahila. Yeah. But it's that somebody else, then maybe my editor or, if I'm part of a larger thing, has to put those slices together. Right. So it's problematic if everybody is looking at the gaze of Seema as a... Right. That's a huge burden on the patrakar. It distorts the news story if everything is coming out. And then I remain a Mahila. Yeah. This, on me, that it's a huge cross to bear.
Yeah. I wanted to get Abhigyanji's view on one thing before I hand it over to Aaron. That you said that the mainstream, and it's been my experience also, and I'm sure everyone on this panel will also agree with me, that some sections of media organizations have inordinate amount of power, sometimes unjustified, to even kill a very good reporter, journalist, or a career which doesn't go forward. Do you think the digital space is the place where such excellence can come to shift and also flourish?
Yes, of course. Worldwide it is proven, and there's no doubt, because and very good point Seema made. I'm sorry to say, but yes, there's enormous obsession about me, myself, me in the frame, me in the voiceover. See, please understand, digital will also be very critical towards you. Right. So it'll be very faster. It'll be faster in terms of criticality. So whatever you feel has been left off, whatever you feel has by newsroom politicians not been allowed for you to do, because how much politics happen in news organizations.
Right.
Digital can be the space that you can go out and express yourself whichever way you want, and also find new formulas of storytelling. There's no need to be different or anything, but you can also find new ways of telling the same story, because you will not have that sort of a control over your product, your content product, which is in conflict with whatever your organization wants to do. So you can most certainly excel and also do something which you feel a little more freer, if I will be honest. So that happens. But I'll just come back to one point because it's been very disturbing, and I've spoken about it both in India and outside the way. I don't even know if in any other country women journalists are targeted like this. And there's Sakshi Joshi is absolutely correct. There's a design, there is a promotion, there is a backing being given so that you can go ahead. But also understand, and which is the point that needs to be made, politicians also die for the vote of women. Now, this is where the bloody contradiction is. Their supporters will come on the social media and abuse you for literally taking a line which they will not be very happy. And you also want their vote. So these politicians also have to be questioned. That please understand, it's great fun. You're actually trying to demolish someone's individuality, identity. And then to the same women, you will design schemes and come out with soft so that you end up getting their votes. So this is such a facade that is developing in the digital era that sometimes I fail to understand that why are we going around tom-tomming this digital India, changing India? You are not even ready to change some basic contours of your behavior. You know, this is 2020. How many years you've been through independence? These are very serious issues.
Wonderful.
We need to keep speaking up now.
Yes. Aaron, may I request you to quickly go through the questions? I know we have overshot the time. This is a wonderful conversation. We could have gone longer. And could you just direct the questions, please?
Absolutely, ma'am. My heart just couldn't agree with, asking to give reminders about time reaching an end, because that's how engaging the session was. And I think that's also reflective in the fact that we've got more than 10 questions. But because of the fact that we are on a crunch time, I'll be taking as many as we can within our time limit. The first question is to Ms. Sakshi Joshi. It's a two-pronged question. The first part, which I think is already answered in your speech. The question that has been put out is, do women journalists in digital spaces enjoy freedom and get more respect than they do in mainstream media? Is the rise of... Yeah, the subsequent part of it is the rise of digital media an outcome of gender bias in mainstream media, and should it be regulated?
No, I don't think, the way I have moved to digital space is the outcome of any gender bias. I will not put it like that. Just like Seema ji said, I'm not that feminist kind of feminist. I'm just, I'm very happy being with other male members also of the same fraternity. They're also doing very well. And I'm also doing very well. But the thing is that I am here because, yes, I did not enjoy that freedom that I think that as a journalist I would have. So I don't want to rate myself as a woman journalist, but yes, my journalism was hampered in the mainstream media. So that is the reason that I'm coming to digital, and the kind of stories I've done, since August, because August was the time when I launched my digital platform. Since then, I have done certain things which I thought that, mainstream media would not be giving so much of importance to it. And I got to do that. And had I been a part of them, I would have still not gone that much. So I will not make it as a, gender biased.
Fair enough, ma'am. What about the question about digital media being regulated? Should it be regulated?
See, digital media का हल्का सा regulation अगर जरूरी है तो मुझे उसमें कोई problem नहीं है. Only if there is, and this if is a very big if. Only if it is regulated without any biases. Now, seeing what is happening on the social media like Twitter and any other platform, we see Kapil Mishra roaming around very freely. We see so many people who have been, doing every kind of stuff that should, they should not be doing or saying, but they are not even touched just because they belong to the ruling party. So, seeing the whole track record, Sambit Patra, Amit Malviya, दोनों के tweet, I think पूरे India में, they are the only people whose tweets have been marked as manipulated media. So still, they had the guts to stay with the same tweet. Had it been us, हमको delete करना पड़ता या फिर हमको कितना trolling होगा. So this biasness जब होगा, then I have issues with those guidelines, because guidelines ला कौन रहा है, same party की सरकार. So that is the place where I have issues. Otherwise, guidelines आने में, उसको follow करने में हम लोगों को कोई problem नहीं है. I have been a part of mainstream media 16 साल, वहां पर भी guidelines ही चलती हैं. उस guidelines में हम लोग काम कर चुके हैं. तो guidelines is not something that we should be scared of. It's only the biasness that we need to be scared of.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think that did address both parts of the question. Seema, ma'am, we'll move forward. First, I'd really like to know your opinion on regulating digital media platforms as well, especially in light of arguments of free speech and how they can be moderated. And subsequently, I'll take the other question that is there.
On digital media regulation is a very hot subject because of these desperate things that are going on. This is not regulation. They're wanting to control the narrative. So control is out, throttling is out. Regulation, digital should be subject to the same regulations that offline media is subject to. After all, it's a reflection of offline life. So if somebody is being offensive, if somebody is giving a rape threat, if somebody is doing inappropriate news, they should be dealt with like people are dealt with in offline. There is a press council. There's other methods of regulating, of self-regulation of offline media. Digital should be subject to that. I think critically what comes in, what will improve spaces is when real life and real politics improves at a show. And number two, when women get up, recognize it. So we are not embarrassed when we're abused, and we get up and say enough is enough. Because women, a lot of women are embarrassed. They take the trolling. They don't like saying all that. That acts, people get more and more kind of assertive about it. But if women speak about it and say enough is enough, and they're supported by their male colleagues, that would, add itself to regulating it. So I think it's a little more complicated than just getting Sarkari Babus and the government of the day to come and regulate me. I think that's a bad idea.
I think that does sum up the sense of it really well. I'll just get Abhigyan sir in between, and I'll come back to you, Seema ma'am, in just a second. Sir, you spoke extensively about how political parties need to undertake a great level of self-awareness and self-regulation with respect to how their cadre or supporters function. Do you think the same needs to apply to mainstream media as well? Because you see in mainstream media as well that there is an element of gender bias that is reflected when shows take place. So how should that be regulated? So isn't the onus...
Two very clear points, and very quickly, because all of us have to leave. Firstly, understand the point that Seema is making. Repeat it to everyone. Control/regulation. Regulation is a different word, and in the name of regulation, trying to achieve control is something different. Every free speech space has to fight any kind of control. Please don't mix up the two, and that is what the Babus try and presents to you. Secondly, if you don't learn from your mistake, which is for the mainstream media, and they are certainly not learning from it, no political party, and I and Seema, two people here can tell you, no political party would not want media to be under some sort of a control for themselves. Forget Congress, BJP. We've seen history of India. Please understand. So you don't learn from your mistake, they will come. The best that suits political parties is a deeply divided media, vertically split media, which is precisely what is happening. They will gain from it. Who will not gain? Do you think Congress, which got emergency, will not learn how to control the media if ever comes back to power? So please understand, we have to learn our lessons faster. Otherwise, you will have some INB ministry committee babus sitting around telling you that, this is what you've done is wrong. This is what is perceptible against some sort of a national security issue. See, these confusions have happened worldwide. India is not an exception. We also have to learn. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much. I'd now like to ask Nilima ma'am to kindly give the concluding remarks of the panel. Ma'am, please.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Abhigyan ji. Thank you, Sakshi. Thank you, Seema, for all your time, opinion, sharing experience from the ground. I think the audience is greatly enriched from your point of view because you bring in years of experience of not just dealing with journalists and the government, but also the field dealing with the people and issues of India. Thank you so much for joining us in this second Rate the Debate conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. I request all the attendees to kindly stay back. We have another session starting at 2:15. We would be broadcasting a few videos, which is a reflection of the work that Raise the Debate has been doing since the time it was established. We would really appreciate if even our panelists could stay on and look at least one or two of the videos if they do have the time. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Sakshi. Thank you, Seema, so much.
Thank you.
पैसों से कुरान की पढ़ाई हो सकती है तो फिर बाइबल और गीता की क्यों नहीं?
सरकारी पैसे से कुरान क्यों पढ़ाई? सरकारी मदरसे बंद हो जाएंगे अब असम में कुरान जरूरी, गीता बाइबल से क्या दूरी भाई? मदरसों में दीन के बहाने क्या जिहादी पढ़ाई?
मगर सबसे बड़ा सवाल मदरसों को लेकर है कि क्या असम की तर्ज पर बाकी और राज्यों को ये फैसला करेंगे या ये महज सियासी मुद्दा बनकर रह जाएगा।
मदरसे पर बैन तो सियासत बेचैन।
करीब 14 महीने बाद आजाद होते ही महबूबा मुफ्ती ने भारत के खिलाफ वही भाषा बोली जो अब तक पाकिस्तान और पाकिस्तान में आतंकियों को पसंद है।
बिहार में चुनाव बाद कश्मीर आइल बार, नया चुनाव पुराना दाव, हर बार की तरह
पूरा बिहार ललकार रहा कि सुशांत को इंसाफ नहीं तो हमारा वोट।
मदरसे का मान, कुंभ का क्यों अपमान?
हिंदू आस्था पर मांगे वोट, अब कुंभ पर क्यों चोट?
उत्तर पर कश्मीर की पुरानी राजनीति की पिक्चर आज फिर दिखाई पड़ रही है। क्या 370 के मारे अब गुप्कार के सहारे?
आज हम आके की बुराई कर सकती है। पहले अपने आप को तो सुधारे, खुद ब्लैक में अपने पति।
सरकारों को
आपको मैं अंग्रेजी बोलने के लिए कहूँ आपकी हालत टाइट हो जाएगी। आपको मैं अंग्रेजी बोलने के लिए कहूँ आपकी हालत टाइट हो जाएगी। बोलिए अंग्रेजी, आप मेरे से अंग्रेजी में डिबेट करिए।
Patriotism is in your heart. Then why are you being forced?
Why are you forcing us?
Where's the question of forcing you?
Hello and welcome to the second Rate the Debate conference. Welcome Nidhi, Rama, Nakma. So glad you could join us to discuss a very, very important issue about media hierarchies and the role of women. Before we get there, can I request you to please watch a brief video, very brief I promise, on the work we have done at Rate the Debate. Aaron is my associate and a very important part of Rate the Debate. So he'll be curating the video as well as the questions at the end of the session. Enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, ma'am. We have the video coming up right now.
Let us listen to the common citizens of India regarding the impact of the fuel price and LPG price hike on their daily lives.
पेट्रोल और डीजल की रोज रोज बढ़ती कीमतें नए नए रिकॉर्ड्स बना रही हैं। इससे लोगों को काफी परेशानियां हो रही हैं।
इससे बहुत परेशानी जी। मैं तो ये सोच रहा हूँ कि अब गाड़ी बेच दूं। गाड़ी चलाना हमारे बस में ही नहीं है।
इतना महंगा हो गया है कि अब गाड़ी से जो हम करते थे अब साइकिल से कर रहे हैं।
ਪੈਟਰੋਲ ਦੇ ਦਾਮ ਹੈਗੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵਧ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਵਧਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ ਔਰ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਰ ਪਾਸੇ ਇਫੈਕਟ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ।
गॅसचे पण भाव वाढलेले आहेत। आता सर्वसामान्य माणसांनी जगायचं कसं?
हे लॉकडाऊनमुळे सर्वांचे बिझनेसचे नोकऱ्यापणाचे नुकसान झालं आहे आणि आता मध्येच 50 रुपयाने सिलेंडर वाढवायचं म्हणजे बजेटमध्ये पूर्ण प्रॉब्लेम येणार आहे।
आम्ही तो इनकम नहीं कि आम्ही ऑटो गैस किनबो ऑटो जाने
बहुत मुश्किल हो गया जीना। सवार कस्टमर पैसे नहीं दे रहे। सवेरे से अभी 20 रुपये की बोल नहीं दिया हो, 7 बजे से निकला हो।
ये सीधा सीधा एक मिडिल क्लास और हर क्लास के इंसान को इफेक्ट कर रहा है क्योंकि ये बहुत इफेक्ट कर रहा है। इन्फ्लेशन बढ़ रही है इसके कारण कहीं ना कहीं और जो रोज़मर्रा का खर्चा है इंसान का वो भी बढ़ रहा है इसके कारण।
बहुत असर पड़ रहा है। घर से 100 रुपये मिलते हैं पेट्रोल के तो हम 100 रुपये का पेट्रोल ही डलवा लेते हैं। 90 रुपये लीटर हो रहा है। बचेगा क्या हमारे पास? अब गरीब पे तो मार पड़ी रही है। अमीर को कोई टेंशन नहीं है। चाहे 1000 का हो जाए 1 रुपये लीटर वो भरवाएगा तब भी।
पहले हमारा पेट्रोल महीने में 8000 का लगता था, आज करीब 12000 रुपये लगते हैं हमारे।
This is neither pro nor anti. This is the real picture. Think about it.
Thank you very much for your patience. This was a glimpse of something we have done, but at the end of this session, we will also be showing a video of the research that RTD has undertaken so that our panelists and our audience can understand what is the actual work that RTD involves itself in. First of all, thank you, Nilima ma'am, for giving me the opportunity to introduce the guests for this extremely important panel. Session 2 of Rate the Debate. It's a matter of great privilege and honor for all of us at Rate the Debate and the audience to have Mr. Rama Lakshmi ji. Rama Lakshmi ji was the India correspondent of the Washington Post for 27 years and has won the ASNE award for her coverage of the 2004 tsunami. She is now the opinion editor at theprint.in. A trained museologist and oral historian, Ramaji is the curator of Remember Bhopal Museum and has studied feminist politics, refugee rights, and the American civil rights movement. Rama Lakshmi ji, it's an absolute honor and privilege for all of us to have you as a part of the panel. Ramaji would be moderating this session. Now, as a part of this session, we also have Ms. Nidhi Razdan. Nidhi ma'am is an award-winning senior journalist and former executive editor of NDTV, where she worked for 21 years. As a reporter, Nidhi ji covered national politics and foreign affairs, reporting from Pakistan, China, Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, Tibet, Iran, Afghanistan, and many more regions from across the world and the subcontinent. Nidhi ma'am has anchored NDTV's flagship primetime show like Left, Right, and Center and The Big Fight. She was the recipient of the International Press Institute India Award for 2019 and the Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence in Journalism for her reporting from Jammu and Kashmir. Her first book, Left, Right, and Center, The Idea of India, was published by Penguin in 2017. Nidhi ma'am, it's an absolute privilege and honor for all of us to have you on board. Thank you. Also with us on the panel, we have Nagma Sahar ma'am. Nagma ma'am is a senior editor with NDTV and also a senior fellow at ORF. She's a bilingual journalist. Nagma ma'am is proficient in Hindi, English, and Urdu. She was the UGC JRF scholar, having specialized in rural development. She also hosts ORF's weekly video series, India's World, and also anchors the weekly show Hum Log on NDTV India. In addition to that, she also does the 8:30 news every night. Thank you very much, Nagma ma'am, for taking time out of your busy schedule and being a part of this panel. Now, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce the thematic question of this panel. Women in media hierarchy, is editorship gender specific? Media spaces must be representative to reflect the complexity of the field. Women journalists in influential roles can make news inclusive, but does that happen? Now I hand over the panel and the session to Rama Lakshmi ji to conduct the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for inviting me, Nilima. Hi, Nidhi. Hi, Nagma. Good to connect with you here. I wanted to set off this conversation with a couple of points. One is I'm familiar with the American newsrooms to some extent, and in the last 4 years with the Indian newsrooms as well. In the US, at least, since the end of 80s, after ASNI, which is the American Society for News Editors, they got many newspapers to pledge that from now on, every second person who's hired in newsrooms will be either a woman or a minority, a racial minority. And so in the last 3 decades or 4 decades since then, there has been many newsrooms where women are the majority. So, and I think that would be true for most Indian newsrooms as well, at least the national newspapers that I confront in Delhi. So now that we've entered the room, now that we've got the representation, now that we've got the numbers and optics, what would be our next mandate? You find many journalists, women journalists in India and around the world. You also find many editors as well. So the question I would like to ask, and the point I'd like to make in the beginning, is that we've gotten into the room, we've pushed down the doors, we've gotten into the room. Now we've got 2 mandates. One is to look up at the ceiling of the room, and the next is to check the oxygen levels in that room. And when I say oxygen level, that is much more important to me, because we can even get to the ceiling, but the oxygen level for women has to change, which basically means everyday decisions, everyday language in the newsroom has to make women feel like it's a safe space for them, that it's a safe working place for women. Is that being done, and what needs to be done to fix the oxygen level? Should we start with you, Nagma, and then maybe we'll go over to Nidhi?
Well, thank you, Rama. Good to connect with you here. Hi, Nidhi. Hi, Nilima. So, from the time I started working in television, and that's been a really long time now, also with NDTV, it's been a very, very long time. I myself have seen a lot of changes that have taken place in the Indian newsroom. Having said that, even in terms of numbers, we're still falling short. I was just going through some data which the UN Women had, compiled over a period of 3 months in 2019. And the data really shocked me that even now, if I talk about the Hindi world especially, so the Hindi newspapers, the front page articles if you look at the bylines, it's only 5% women there who find space on the front page, as opposed to the English medium newspapers, which has about 21%. Now that itself is shocking. The Hindi dailies are also doing bad, but the English dailies, but the Hindi dailies are very, very bad. When we look at the newsroom, like television channels, the representation of women on the panels that we get is so dismal that we have a new term, the manels, and we have only men sitting on the panels. And a lot of times we don't even notice that we do not have enough women representation. And I think it's time that we are sensitive to that and we really make sure that we do have a woman voice there. But at the same time, not just for the sake of having a woman there are many, many women out there who are equally capable, efficient, but who are still not getting the chance or not in the limelight. Things have changed a lot for women in the news media, in television industry, in terms of the kind of assignments that we get to report on. There was also a time when women joined and you were only getting I'm not saying art and culture is not good enough. I would love to, but it has to be my choice. If I want to report on art, culture, music, we've all done that when we started, because probably it was very soft for men to cover that. There have been some exceptional men too who covered that kind of beat and, have made a mark for themselves. But to assume that a woman would only report on that, a woman to report on crime, on defense, is still so low. Even in the defense sector, the number of women who are called as experts or who are reporting on in the defense sector is very, very low. People also have an argument that since the number of women has increased, we have made the inroads in the newsroom, women need to talk about the women's subjects. So which is why women are reporting more on women issues. And if it is, women will work towards a more inclusive newsroom. The representation has increased. The kind of reporting assignments we get has changed, but the biases, I feel, are still there, and some of them are very, very subtle now. You sometimes may not be able to point out that there is a very obvious bias, but you see it in terms of the role that you would get and eventually the say you would have in decision making. People in NDTV, I find that the situation is much better than what I would have seen or I can see in many other news spaces, though there are women who are executive editors and at high posts, but I don't really think that they have a lot of, a lot of these changes are also cosmetic, but even that is important. But even now, what I'm trying to say is a lot has to be done where men and women have an equal space in the newsroom in terms of decision making. Of course, NDTV is an exception where we are still headed by the channel NDTV 24/7. Of course, we have Sonia and Suparna who are at the helm of things. So that's probably one of the exceptions, one of the better places to work. But among a lot of newsrooms where you see are dominated still by men who are calling the shots. I remember, if you talk at the Hindi medium newspapers, when Mrinal Pandey became the editor of Hindustan, it was a big thing because a woman in the Hindi space had become the editor. People thought a lot of things will change in the newsroom, because remember, Rama, in the Hindi newsroom, in the newspapers, women were still something like 2-3 women hanging around, and everybody is just, I'm talking about a couple of years back. Things have changed now, but 15, 20, 25 years back. So the numbers were very less, but Mrinal Pandey becoming an editor did change that environment. It made the newsroom, probably a lot of women who were working there, they must have felt a bit safer there. But there is so much to be done still in the sense, I feel that women are there, some of the women are faces, but are women actually getting that kind of power to make those decisions is a big question. I mean, I would like Nidhi's input on it, and then maybe we can go along.
Thanks very much, Nagma. It's so great to see you here. And Rama and Nilima, thanks very much for inviting me to this fascinating discussion. And Nagma and I have shared the same newsroom for a number of years. So I agree largely with what Nagma has said about representation at higher levels, particularly in an organization like NDTV, because I think it's important. Our own personal experiences are also important. I spent my entire life in a newsroom at NDTV. So I have actually, I think, lived in a much sort of more protected bubble in a sense. Nagma has worked elsewhere. She's seen different newsrooms and has those experiences to bring. But from the day that I joined in 1999, I found, at least in NDTV, whether it was on reporting issues, whether it was anchoring, women were really at the forefront of that. And as Nagma pointed out, in terms of editorial positions, you have Sonia Singh, who's the editorial director of NDTV right now. Suparna, who is in a very senior position, has been our CEO in NDTV. I was executive editor, our managing editor in NDTV 24/7, Manika Raikwar Ahirwal, also a woman. And they were not just sort of there as figureheads, but, you know, anyone who works in the newsroom in NDTV will tell you that the buck stops with Sonia. And so she is with Sonia and Suparna, and that they are, you know, the sort of the final decision makers. So that's been great. And as a reporter, I was personally fortunate that I was able to, you know, I was pushed into political reporting from day one. And for me, I credit that to my first political editor at the time, Rajdeep Sardesai, who, you know, said, you can do this, you have the potential to report on politics, go ahead and do it. And I think, you know, he was someone who was sort of at the forefront of pushing me to report on politics, to report on the NDA government at the time, the Vajpayee government, and, you know, subsequently other political stories. So I think it's very important, the kind of editors we have, whether men or women, and how they encourage women reporters in particular to report on issues that are outside the stereotypes that Nagma mentioned, which often, you know, was the case. But something I noticed when I began political reporting all those years ago was that there were so many women beat reporters covering the BJP, the Congress, and they're still around. You know, they're so good at what they do. They were at the forefront of press conferences. You remember Neena ji would be at the BJP daily briefing every day. Anita Katyal, Anita Joshua. I mean, you know, there's a long line of a generation of women reporters and now editors who sort of set the path for the rest of us, and were very much at the forefront. And I read the same UN report, women report, Nagma, that you pointed out, and it rightly, you know, what surprised me also was just the lack of sort of leadership positions in newsrooms that women have. In that same study, they saw that less than 5% of newsroom leadership positions across newspapers were occupied by women. For TV channels, it stood at 26.3, at 20%, at 21%. So that's still abysmally low. And that's despite the fact, as you pointed out, Rama, in the beginning, that you have so many women who are very much in the room when it comes to reporting on key issues. My own experience was that I was encouraged to report on politics, on defense issues, though I have to say here that I remember one of my early interviews with the then Air Force chief. Was it the air chief? No, I think it was the then defense minister. And I bagged that interview. And one of our male reporters come editors, I mean, I'm giving it away who it is, who's very much into defense, kind of jumped in and said, well, you know, she can't go in there alone and interview the defense minister. I know these issues, kind of thing. So we were both sent together. And I remember feeling kind of resentful about that, you know, do you not think I'm capable of asking George Fernandez questions on the MiG-21 on my own, you know? So that's one incident that stood out, you know, as somewhere where maybe it was felt that his expertise would somehow add weight to this particular issue. But otherwise, one hasn't felt that in terms of one's own experience. I think what you talked about, Rama, is that there is still, and Nagma mentioned that as well, there's still a very sort of deep-seated bias and a deep-seated sort of a wall that comes when you talk about women in leadership positions. And I think that is the next barrier that we have to break. Newsrooms, I think, will change for the better if you have women in more leadership roles. I sincerely believe that. And I don't know what the next few years will bring, but hopefully with more and more women now becoming editors, even at the mid-level, I hope that we're going to see change in the next few years.
So you talked about the leadership positions. What happens when, I mean, this has happened, of course, in many places, not just in newsrooms, but when women reach a particular position, they also imbibe and internalize the alpha male newsroom culture. And, you know, they stop in fact, many men and women in leadership positions say, I am gender blind. I don't recognize gender. It's like being, I am caste blind. How many women, when they reach that position, continue to be gender alert? I think gender blind is a hugely problematic term. I'm not even saying gender aware, but we need to be gender alert in today's newsroom, right? So do you do enough women in senior positions lift other women? Do they, I mean, in feminist movement, we have a saying that says, hold the door, you hold the door for others, you mentor, you don't just kick the ladder once you go up. So do you find that kind of alertness to issues of gender, whether in representation or beats or sourcing or the way the story is portrayed, and keep this, safe working space, promotions, pay parity? Do you think women leaders bring this as they go up?
Can I just add here? I can't really say that this is happening in general, or all men are not the same. Nidhi mentioned some of the editors who were men were more alert and were very conscious that a woman should also get the chance to go out there and cover politics. So similarly, not all women, again, are the same. I have noticed some women who are in these senior positions being more gender alert, in the sense also being more sensitive to many issues around, or the way things are reported, the way the language in the newsroom, the culture in the newsroom. But it totally depends from individual to individual. There are many women who may not do that. It's not that they've reached a position and they will hold the door for you. So again, I cannot say that it has. Also, we don't still have so many women out there that they can probably safely do this once they have reached there with all that hard work that you have to. I mean, still in all fields, it's not just media. Women have to always put in extra, prove that they're better or at par with the men around them to reach that level. It's not that it's just given to you. I've seen in newsrooms, especially in the Hindi space, and I'm not only talking of NDTV India, even NDTV, the NDTV 24/7 and NDTV India, we are on the same floor, Nidhi, but the desk here and the desk there, the desk is female dominated, a lot more women. Here there were more men on the desk. A lot of them were coming from places where they were not very comfortable, and I'm not blaming them, the culture where they were coming from, the small towns that they were coming from. Probably they were not very open to talking to women, or as a senior anchor, if I may tell them something that this is what I want to take, they were still very resistant that, should I actually listen to what you're saying? So it always took us a little more effort to kind of make them understand that I know what I'm talking about and I'm responsible for my bulletin. So that kind of difference I've seen in the newsroom, even here at NDTV. So, in the Hindi space, I see that it's not the same as the English newsroom would be. So the Hindi world and the English world are very different. And in this space, a woman who has reached that level, I think they're still not very confident that they will be able to, make way for the rest of the women to come up and hold the door for them. It's a long way to go. But I definitely think that the newsroom culture with more women around, for example, in NDTV, we are more women, and the culture there, and a newsroom where there are more men around, the atmosphere, the comfort level, all that definitely changes. Or the men who are more gender neutral or gender sensitive, if you go to them with a certain, even for example, I have a problem at home and I need to, manage that with my work. And if I speak to a person who is more gender sensitive, we've had change of editors, and I have seen on a one-to-one level how everybody would deal with it differently. So we need also, yes, women, but also men who are gender sensitive make a lot of difference when they are at the senior level.
Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, Nagma, what you said about the difference in the Hindi and English newsroom is so true, because we have been on the same floor. And you're right. I mean, there's a completely different dynamic in the 24/7 newsroom in English and one in NDTV India for various reasons. I've also found, Rama, that I find women in editorial positions, at least from my own experience, kind of what Nagma said, open to sort of being better listeners. I've had reporters come up to me, men, women, come and feel that they can unburden and talk about their problems in a way that they wouldn't do with a male counterpart. And somehow I find that women tend to view even personal issues in particular, and everyone has, you know, issues. And when you're a journalist in a TV newsroom in particular, you're kind of wedded to your job. So they have no other space to really turn to talk to. And so it's important to have an empathetic newsroom and empathetic leadership in the newsroom. And I do find that women editors are more open to understanding personal issues, issues that, you know, reporters might face at home, etc. I found certainly that personally, as a young reporter, it was easier, you know, it was much easier for me to sort of walk into my female editor's room to talk about things and be open about it, and it, you know, it was very well received. So that is as far as one's own sort of personal experience goes. But Rama, I forgot the question that, you know, you had at the beginning in terms of if you could just repeat that, the specific question you had.
I have also forgotten.
Have you forgotten to?
Once women reach that level, are they really making it easier?
Not necessarily. Yeah. Not necessarily. And, you know, I'm not taking names here, but it can often be the opposite. So
like Nagma said, it's right. not all women, like she said, you can expect, and some men are also gender alert. So if it's not a question of leadership, if you have enough women in the leadership position, but if they don't do enough to change the newsroom culture, which is the oxygen level I talked about, my next question is, what would contribute more to the newsroom oxygen level or culture? Having women as editors? I mean, of course, we can say both, but having women as editor, or having women in large numbers in the newsroom, when they have the push, you know, the might of, you know, the numbers, and they're able to push back certain things. You can have 90% women workforce, but a male editor. Is that a more conducive atmosphere to bring about daily changes? And I'm talking about daily, everyday language, like language in the news editorial meeting, and the jokes and the humor and, you know, the banter. Is that a better way, or having one or two women right at the top, and then the message kind of goes down? What is a more quicker and effective way?
I think the first one, because I'm all for more representation of women across the board, not just in leadership positions, but as reporters, as producers, as camera persons, you know, and again, I've worked in a news organization which has been like that, which is why you won't see expletives. I think it makes a difference. For example, if you're sitting in an editorial meeting and there are more women in it, they'll be less likely of that, you know, guys will sort of, you know, say whatever they want in terms of expletives and the use of language and what they talk about. So I think that does make a difference. I think overall, when you see and when you see women in all kinds of roles in the newsroom, then there is a pushback, definitely. I think what Nagma was trying to say earlier is that it's not necessary that women as editors will necessarily promote other women in leadership positions, and we have seen that, you know, in our own experience as well. So that is irrespective of gender, and you know, to be a good editor, you could be a very good male editor and still sort of, as you said, be gender alert. But I think the more women you have in every role in the newsroom, the better it is. I think overall it's good for all of us.
I agree with that. And I think, but Rama, what you mentioned in the beginning, what's happening in newsrooms outside India, there is a conscious effort to hire more women, you know. I remember reading about that 50-50 campaign and a project that BBC also undertook. So you need to be alert to the number of women you are employing. And I'm not saying that you just employ women for the sake of employing women. There are many good women who are capable and who are efficient and who, you know, on all possible roles in newsroom. In NDTV, we've had camera persons, and in production is dominated by women, and the production is being headed by women here in NDTV. So the more women you have, the better it is. And in any case, you know, once you have women all around, one of them would probably become also, you know, take the leadership role or take the editorial role. But you need to change the culture there of having more women around.
So to come back to the Washington Post example, as on date, there are 4 out of 17 departments, only 4 departments are headed by women, right? although the majority is women. I mean, it's more than 50% women across the newsroom. And a couple of things happen. One is, of course, the very difficult and contested issues of pay parity, right? Same jobs, a man does the job, a woman does the job, woman tends to get paid lesser. And the promotions. So if a woman who's joined in the newsroom as a reporter isn't able to see pay raises that is commensurate with the work she's doing or equal to what the men are doing, if she's not able to see opportunities for promotion, then she tends to leave, which basically means when the time for promotion comes, there are very few women left from the pool to move up. So let's talk about the difficult issues of pay parity. How does it work in the Indian media?
I think the same as it would in any other profession. I mean, if you look at pay parity issues, they're not unique to just the media. You see it in the film industry, you see it in India Inc., everywhere, where you have this problem. You see it. I think there was a row in the BBC just now over well-known women anchors who were not or who were being paid a sort of a fraction of what their male counterparts were doing, which was exactly the same work. So this is a universal problem. It's not just confined to Indian newsrooms. And again, I think we need to put what Nagma and I have experienced aside, because that's not really the case again in NDTV, where it's the complete opposite. In fact, it's so different that for the last 2-3 years, every time we had to hire somebody, I kept being told, hire a boy, we need men in the newsroom, we have a complete imbalance. And it was the other way around. So I'm putting that aside, but I think that this issue of pay parity, again, it's a serious one, and it cuts across. I mean, it's something that women are dealing with, and it's a challenge that women are dealing with across professions. So I think until proprietors, media owners, every industry realizes the value that women bring, and that it's not 1970 anymore. You need to change. Until that happens, I think this will continue to be an issue.
From pay parity to another difficult question, which is difficult issue, not question, which is POSH committees, sexual harassment, which again comes down to everyday casual sexism in the office, in the workplace. Many of the newsrooms, especially after Me Too, have in India formed POSH committees, and usually they have HR person as head or somebody else. Do you think enough is being done, or proactively? Do you think every new hire has to go through a training, or is it just like, they just know that there is a committee and they know what Vishaka guidelines are? Is there enough proactive training that's given repeatedly on a yearly basis to new recruits and old people and older employees? What needs to be done to make those spaces safe and make the POSH committees more effective?
At our workplace, I've seen a lot of, Nidhi would remember a lot of public places like your coffee machine or your lift lobby, everywhere. There were posters which reminded you that this office, you need to follow these rules and what is sexual harassment. So any new person who would come in would also see those. But I have not seen, I don't know whether there are very active meetings or training that is taking place for every new recruit. A lot more needs to be done. But once these things were implemented in offices or the workplaces, I also think that a lot of people became more aware and are more conscious of what really is sexual harassment, or, should you, for example, a casual, Rama, it's so subtle at times, or the way we've all been, or our boys or our men have been brought up, that a lot of times we were not even tuned or not alert on what really is a sexual comment. And things like, a very light comment, which probably the men or a lot of women around would not even notice that does it have a sexual undertone? What is it? So it's wrapped, it's wrapped in so many layers that a lot of times it's very difficult to point out. But I think we as women also have become more aware and alert of noticing things and looking at it in a different way than what probably I as a young reporter would have noted. A lot of times I've been asked that, have you faced any discrimination or any biases? And I would like, No. So yes, even now my answer largely is no. But when I look back now, at times I remember from personal examples that there have been certain biases which you have, though I've been more privileged that way. I have always got opportunities and good opportunities. I was probably good at my work, or for whatever reason, I have got those opportunities. But even then, I remember, for example, I was not in the newsroom. Someone else was in the studio. This was a big scandal had broken out in the parliament, and a woman was anchoring in the studio. And once this happened, I'm talking about the Hindi studio here at NDTV, 2 men anchors walked in to take over. Now, it could also be a matter of being senior or junior, but it's very rarely I see that. Sometimes also maybe because there were less women as senior anchors that time, that a woman would walk in and replace a man. So those kind of, and I still remember that, it stayed with me, that why did they have to do that? A woman wasn't a woman capable of, that anchor was capable of handling this breaking news? I mean, so many subtle biases, or like I mentioned earlier at the desk, all these things have been there. I don't know whether really some trainings are being given. I don't think that every new recruit is really undergone, but probably they're made aware of these guidelines in our workplace. Everywhere that I've seen that it's pasted around, and people see and are more aware of these things now.
I'd agree.
Is there a difference between older generation women and younger generation women in the newsroom in the way they look at
this issue? I think that with the newer generation, there is a greater awareness, as Nagma also pointed out, about what about sexual harassment, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that someone just grabs you. That it can be very verbal, it can be very indirect, that it takes different shapes and forms. There's a lot of innuendo, and I think many women before would kind of give guys in the newsroom, or even people you went to interview, a free pass, because you just assumed that it was either harmless, or it came with the territory, or you'd be too afraid to say anything, or you'd think that you'd be accused of overreacting to a stray comment and making a big deal out of something. And I have noticed that younger women who come in and work now in newsrooms, and maybe not just newsrooms, but across the board, are far more aware, vocal. And I think the Me Too movement on social media helped them get that voice, because we saw a lot of young women speaking out and, finding the courage to talk about their own experiences. And that is never easy for anyone, as we know. So I think what Priya Ramani has done for the Me Too movement has been a great sort of contribution, particularly in newsrooms. So I do find that women are more aware. I also find newsrooms are more aware. At least, again, we can only speak of our own experience. That again, Nagma and I were in a very different environment by and large, but I do find that after the whole Me Too thing exploded, that there was a more conscious effort made to ensure that regular meetings of these committees were held. There were actually, Nagma, quite a few training sessions that were given to the entire newsroom in the big studio. Remember that everybody was called in and everyone was told what the guidelines are, and it was happening on a more regular basis. So I think that when some people came forward with complaints, again, there was a greater effort, I think, made to ensure that these were looked into as quickly as possible, as thoroughly as possible as well. So I think that to that extent, it's made newsrooms more aware. Has it made the environment safer overall for women in terms of, I don't know, that might be a much bigger question. I think a lot of men also have unconscious biases and don't even realize what they're saying, because they've been brought up in a certain way where they think it's perfectly okay to make a certain comment about a woman's looks or her clothes or her personal life, and not even realize that they're crossing a line. And that might be a much longer battle for us to fight.
Absolutely. I just wanted to add there, I met an anchor from a news channel I should not be naming, but I was told, and I'm surprised that this still happens, that all the women anchors were asked to dress up in a certain way. And this is a television newsroom in the studio, that you're supposed to wear Western, which is all right, Western clothes, but skirts. And somebody who had put on some weight was actually taken off air. because you need to reduce and you need to look a certain way. Only then you could be back on air. And I'm sorry, how many men, handsome men with, fantastic bodies do you see on Indian television?
Please
and
let me
whether
know.
a man is whether a man is ugly, not good looking, it shouldn't matter. I know it's a visual medium, you should be presentable, but I'm also aware that I should be presentable. Why should anybody else tell me that because you have put on weight, because you are not looking good in this skirt that you're supposed to wear, so you cannot be anchoring? I was really shocked that these things happen. And these things, we've been more probably privileged and we've been better off, but at the
the smallest green room. I think the smallest green room is in NDTV, which is very sad also. We spend the least amount of time on hair and makeup. But although we should, not for women only, I think it's important to look good. But, actually that reminds me also of, like, when you look at American television media, there's something very cookie cutter, isn't there, about American women news anchors in particular. There is they're all so stunning. I'm not taking away from their journalistic capabilities, but there's a sort of a very prescribed look to everyone who anchors, at least, if not reporters.
That's what Fox News did too. Fox News did too.
Exactly. You had the whole, Megyn Kelly sort of cloned 10 times over, and Gretchen Carlson, etc. But I was really happy to see the other day on Sky News, one of the anchors, she's very pregnant. And it's great that they have her in a full shot. I don't think that you would see a television camera doing that maybe even 10 years ago. But, here she is probably in her 7th or 8th month. So she's very visibly pregnant, and they're embracing it. And that's really fantastic. You're not hiding it. You're sort of embracing it, and it is what it is. And that's great. So I was really happy. It was refreshing to see that for a change. As far as a newsroom was concerned, even if it wasn't an Indian one.
And there is no prescribed look for men here, at least in the Indian television, and all kinds of men. And even, forget about how you're looking, how you're talking, the speech, your diction, it's all right, so those standards apply only to women, and which is sad. So the biases come in so many ways. And at the junior level,
they'll get commented on far more, Nagma, right?
Far more,
get a lot of messages, even from family, who will be like, "Acha, nice discussion, but your hair was looking so lovely." You should wear your hair like that more often. And so somehow we get scrutinized far more for what we're wearing, the lipstick shade, and of course there's an assumption that if you're remotely nice looking, then you
will probably not have the intelligence. You are just there because you're nice looking, and in television especially. Yes,
lots of stereotypes, lots of assumptions that are made about people, women in particular.
And that was very standard.
Especially the word poise and elegance is used for women anchors much more than male anchors.
Yes,
and it's just
never for male anchors. Never for male anchors.
Exactly. So my next question is about intersectionality. Okay, enough women have gotten into the newsrooms. How many women who are not from the upper caste? How many women who are not from big cities? How many women who are religious minorities or from backward states in India? New York Times recently brought out a diversity report, and they talked about the problems that women of color face in New York Times. And they said it's still just 9%. We have to move to 21% people from racial minorities. So most women in Indian newsroom, do you think, tend to be upper caste, big city, Savarna women, Hindus? What do you think? Are we doing enough about intersectionality?
No, I don't think I don't see numbers.
What else needs to be done apart from hiring, say, a Dalit or a Muslim or a tribal woman? What else needs to be done? Because you can't just look at them as women. You need to look at them as minorities as well. So how does that work?
No, I can take that first.
Yeah, I don't think we're doing enough. There is no conscious effort. And also, I think it's as far as the upper caste or the Savarna domination is concerned, it's not just with women, but newsrooms are still dominated by upper caste. A lot of times you don't really pay attention, but if I start thinking and if I start counting, then the newsroom in general, whether it's men or women, it's still dominated by upper caste and upper caste majority. So I think again, as I don't know the numbers here, but I think NDTV again is one of the few channels. I'm not talking about just the anchors, but if I look all around me, I probably see more minorities still than I have seen in my, I've just worked with Aaj Tak earlier, and I've been in NDTV for a very long time now. So actually, I'm again in a bubble, and I don't know what's happening in many other newsrooms. But the kind of things that one hears, or the biases or the environment that you see in many other newsrooms in terms of the communal biases, I think it would be very difficult for the minorities to work in that space and feel comfortable. We've also heard of people who quit because of feeling uncomfortable. And as far as women are concerned, yeah, most women who I now see around me are probably upper caste women. In our newsroom, if I look at Hindi, many women from smaller towns or the tier 2 towns were there, who were at the desk, who have made a space for themselves, their own merit, not that, they'd come from very affluent background or their parents were already someone established, big names or journalists who've just come and made a space for themselves. So that's been great, but I don't think there's a conscious effort in giving representation to women from the backward castes or the smaller towns. No.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with what Nagma is saying. I don't think we often realize that also when we're hiring. But yeah, at least in the environment that we've worked in, we've seen a lot of people from as diverse as you can get under the circumstances. From one has never been made to feel anything about one's religion and one's choices, at least in this newsroom. In fact, I think diversity is really celebrated in that sense. So that's, I think, something that's been great for us personally. How it is in other newsrooms, I think sometimes you do hear stories which kind of reflect polarization we've come to across the board in this country.
Yeah. And especially because I know, Nagma, you said, even among men, there isn't enough diversity. It's not just a women's issue, but women speak much more about inclusion. Women speak much more about holding the door. So when we talk about women's representation, we have to make sure that there is diversity of women as well. So the onus upon women is much more. Of course, it would be great if men do that too, but I always feel that it's much more because we talk about representation, diversity, inclusion, much more than.
And when you see, Rama, and talking about that, when you see women who reach that level of editorship, or even when I talk of, long back, if you look at those women who made it to the top, are either reached because they were from the families, already, families which were established, or they were all upper caste women, if you think of names. So yeah, women who have actually made there, also because they had the advantage of the education and bringing. So that's a long journey. Privilege.
Yeah, and women need to acknowledge and admit this privilege as well, because there is a cabal of privilegentia, which is on top of all women editorial leadership positions. I think there isn't enough conversations about that. And if you see a woman and a Dalit in a newsroom, you should recognize that she's probably facing the double whammy of discrimination, and we need to be alert to those kinds of things much more, and those conversations need to come up.
Rama, may I just come in with one statistic? We were just researching the kind of representation women have in leadership roles in media. According to the Press Information Bureau, PIB, and this data is from 2020, there are 158 editors registered with Government of India. As you know, that's where they get the accreditation from, out of which just 26 are editors who are women. So 158 editors on the whole, out of which just 26. The same, it's actually worse in the case of correspondents. It's 1,466 correspondents, out of which just 232 women. So that's the proportion of women decision makers at the top level in media organizations. I think we will never have a proper understanding about gender battles, about how gender has to be viewed, unless women make sure that they are in decision making positions whether in mainstream media or in digital or in any space they are. It's for the larger struggle, for the larger fight. It's absolutely essential. And I think it's also equally important for, I'm not just saying that it's important for women. I think it's totally important for men as well. I think it's important for the society and I think media as a whole. May I now ask, because there is a huge flood of questions, may I now ask my colleague Aaron to direct some of the questions to you, Rama, so that you can decide how to ask. Aaron?
All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. Indeed, a very, very interesting and enlightening panel. Thank you very much. We just have a huge number of questions, but because we are also on a crunch with the time, we'll probably just take up 3 of them. Rama ma'am, if it's okay with you. All right.
Where do I see the questions?
Yeah, I am sending you the questions on your chat box right away. Are you able to get them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just keep sending them there and you could direct the questions.
So there's a question for Nidhi. Is talent and skill as a journalist not enough to create a level playing field in media organization?
Is talent and skill not enough? As opposed to what else? I don't know. I don't think you can survive, frankly, in any field for a very long time, whether it is the media or any other profession, if you're not good at what you do. You might get a leg up if you have another, in terms of entry and entry level, but I don't think you can survive long term anywhere without merit. So that's my personal view. You might get entry without merit, but you won't survive.
There's the next question for Nagma. Women journalists have been actively involved in mainstream media for quite some time now, but seems like no amount of success is enough for them to expect respect for their work and not face disrespect for their grit. What's your stand on this, Nagma?
Yeah, I mean, right in some ways, they've been around, but like we all discussed, that you still face those kind of comments, biases, judgments about your looks, the way you are, or the assumption that you are doing what you are doing just because you look a certain way or you are, so and so, and not because of your merit and talent. So, and this is not just true for media. This is true for almost every field. If you look around, wherever women are working, or even in the society in general, or everywhere, to get that respect or to command that respect for what you are always takes a bit of an extra effort for women. So we have not changed. I mean, I'm not kind of presenting a very dismal picture. I think a lot of positive changes have taken place, but there's a lot of room for improvement. And the newsrooms are just an extension of the society that we live in. So the newsroom is not really a bubble. It can't really change much if your society, if the environment on your roads, on your streets, in your small towns, villages haven't changed. Look at the kind of stories that are coming out of, especially, I'm just naming Western Uttar Pradesh because it's the top of my mind because of all the stories that every other day you read from Western Uttar Pradesh. But unless your society changes, your perspective, the way your men are brought up is changing, you can't expect much change just in the newsroom. You cannot just be a different person in the newsroom. So there is a lot of room for improvement, yes.
And Aaron, are you sending me any more?
Ma'am, I have sent you one more question, which is generic to everyone. That's the last question.
This is a question for everyone. We know the issue. How do we address this? What is the solution? How can women in media ensure that there is a level playing field? Again, I can take a swig at it. As I said, women talk most about inclusion and issues of diversity. We talk most about creating safe spaces, workplaces. So the onus is upon us. We are obliged to create newer avenues for younger women, for minority women, for Dalit women. So the onus is always on women, and we have to make sure that we don't kick the ladder, that we have to keep the door, hold the door open for others. That the onus is completely on us. That's my take. But if you
it's like asking a question, how will India Pakistan resolve their issues, if we had an answer to that. But it's not going to be easy. And I agree with Rama that those women who are fortunate enough to be in leadership positions today, I think there is a greater responsibility that lies with them to open the door for others and to encourage other women to move up that ladder. So yes, I think a lot of it does lie with them. But I think we still have a long way to go. I mean, if you look at the PIB list that Nilima just read out, I mean, these are, of course, government accredited journalists. So they would have a minimum of, I think, 5 years experience. It just reflects, the tough battle that we have ahead of us. And to that extent, Nagma is right. Unless you have a bigger change in the society in which you're growing up in, newsrooms will not really reflect a drastic change from that. So it's a slow but battle, but at least it's getting better. At least I think it is.
I agree. I think it's getting better. And I've seen it while we are working in the newsrooms. I've seen how newsrooms have improved. And it's again, like, if not India, Pakistan, it's also, you can compare it to the India-China complex problem. It's a very complex problem. And it's not that it will be sorted out and it's all existing, it's getting better too, but then there are biases that are coming in very other forms. I think television especially has also given the freedom to women to go out and work in places that they were not venturing into earlier, the kind of assignments, because of a teamwork, the safety, or the environment to interact in a free atmosphere. All that has also taken place in the newsroom. So it has been good. It has helped women in many ways, but it's an ongoing battle. Yes. And it's a long battle. It is our responsibility. It is a responsibility to the women who've reached that level to help the others, to not kick the ladder, all of that. Yes. But things, I think, have definitely improved.
I'd like to quote Madeleine Albright here, who said there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women or support other women. And I totally get that. There's a last question that Aaron has sent me from Rishabh. When a woman journalist asks a serious question from those who are sitting in power, people start questioning her instead and say, do you have anything personal against so-and-so? Did he or she in the position of power do anything to you? Why are women subjected to these kinds of questions? How difficult is this for an honest woman journalist?
Women journalists are subjected to all kinds of harassment online in particular anyway. I mean, we all sort of bear the brunt of that. I think that fundamentally there are just men out there or even people of a certain ideological leaning who really don't like the idea of women who have independent voices, who have their own mind and who speak up. It makes them deeply uncomfortable. And so, you just resort to trolling and harassment and insinuation and innuendo. And, the first thing I would find that, if somebody didn't like an interview I did, or generally anything they don't like, then it'll be like, there'll be sort of innuendo about my personal life and, who I'm seeing and stuff like that. And I just laugh it off now because I'm like, I'm so sorry you have a loveless life, but as if, that's somehow an insult to sort of, bring up someone's personal relationships, etc. So I think women across the board, especially, I mean, that's a separate, I hope you have a panel on this, but if not this time, another time. But just what women journalists go through on Twitter, on social media, and that harassment, unfortunately, has only become worse and not any better.
Yeah, the social media has given them a platform, all those people who are highly frustrated and who cannot digest your success or cannot digest the fact that you're a public figure. And I think it's not just women journalists, it's about women in public places everywhere, whether it's women politicians. I feel sorry for them. Anything they do, a man, can make a fool of himself, a male politician, and it'll be taken at his style as, as being cool. But a woman says something and, just see, again, the personal life and the equations are brought in. I mean, so many of our women politicians around us have faced it. So, it's true for women in public spaces, whether you're a journalist, you're a politician, you're an actress, and you have to just speak your mind and then you have had it. That's what it is.
Too bad.
Aaron or Nilima, do you want to round up?
Aaron, any more questions? Or are we
I think we are a little, no, we are absolutely out of time. We have finished almost our buffer time as well. But we'll make sure that these questions go up on our social media platforms, as Nilima ma'am has already suggested, and we'll get back to everyone on this. I just have first of all, I would really like to thank Rama Lakshmi ma'am, Nidhi ma'am, and Nagma ma'am. This has been a beautiful panel. I think, especially for us as youngsters, there was a lot to try and understand, appreciate, and it's given us the motivation to stand for the right reasons, because at the end of the day, it's our responsibility as well. Thank you very much for making all of us realize that.
Thank you for having us. It was really good to see you.
We would really love it.
Thank you, Rama.
We would really love it if you could just stay back for 2 more minutes, watch a video where we're showing the work that RTD has done. It's just a recap of a few of the things that we have done. So if you could spare 2 more minutes and just watch this video.
And great to have your feedback in case you'd like to suggest, because it's all about TV news. It's all about TV debates. So do have a look.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll have the video up. This was a statistical representation of the work that we have done. These are just glimpses of it. You'll be able to find the entire report cards of every week on Rate the TV Debate and Nilima ma'am's Twitter handle. We'd be really happy if we could get your feedback so that we can probably work on making our broadcasting strong.
It's a great initiative and really much needed in these very toxic media times.
We are trying our best to put some structure to the madness. We might or might not succeed, but let's see. We just started something called the Anchor Language Analysis, where we actually get to from minute-to-minute analysis to second analysis of every debate. So some of the anchors have got back to us saying, हम इतना सोचते नहीं है जब हम बोलते हैं, हम तो ऐसे ही बोल देते हैं. Then I said कि अब से आपको जरा सोचना पड़ेगा what you say, because we are watching you very closely.
You should compel them to think.
Yes, and they're complaining that इतना नहीं सोचते जितना आप उनकी closely देख रहे हो. I think that's one of our objectives achieved, that we're making them aware of their own words and what they mean and the kind of impact they have. So,
out of curiosity, what is it that anchors, what is the word that anchors use the most, English and Hindi separately?
Well, not to name anchors, the one which they have been using a lot in the last 1 month has been Andolanjeevi and Khalistanis, and in reference to what. And the other word which they have been using terribly too much is Tukre Tukre Gang, Urban Naxal. These are the words. The phrases which they use the most are, Desh Khatre Mein Hai, Ek Khatra Hai, those kind of fear arousing kind of words and phrases. Having said that, I guess we have been looking mainly at anchors of a certain kind because we were going through the so-called TRP numbers. So that was our sample frame. So perhaps if we didn't go through that frame and looked at anchors who were really doing great work, maybe there would be other, words. But we thought we.
What's really troubling, Nilima, is if they're using all these politically loaded terms without thinking, especially when they say "hum sochte nahi hai bolne se pehle." If you're saying all these things without thinking, that's even more scary than thinking and doing it.
No, I think the thought behind it is to create a certain perception. The end result is what is aimed at. That's the objective, not the the words which are being used. So if you are saying Andolanjeevi like 56 times in a 30-minute debate, you're not even, what they are saying is we are not even thinking about it. We are just saying it because we are constantly creating a certain perception. So I think that's what they mean. But either ways, we're going to watch them so closely. They will have to
panel. The separate panel discussion.
Yeah, I know. We'll do this. I think we'll continue doing this. And the anchor report cards, please do keep having a look at them. Do suggest in case we need to include more aspects. We have already done a lot of metrics in it, indicators, secondary, primary, all kinds. But as it's an ongoing research, would be wonderful to have your views on Rate the Debate research and how we are ranking content, so that eventually we move away from ranking based on viewership to content-based ranking, so that real work, real journalists go to the top ranks, not those who are at the top right now. That's the plan.
All right.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you so much. Wonderful session. Of course, we could have had this for a much longer period, and I can see from the questions that there are so many questions still pouring in. So we'll try to direct some of them offline to your social media platform so that you can answer. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. While we are setting ourselves up for the third session of the day, I request all the audience and the panelists to just watch 2 videos that Raise the Debate has curated regarding the farmers issue. So we'll be playing 2 really short videos regarding the farmers issue. Stay tuned. We'll be back with our next session. Thank you.
ये कानून बनाए इन नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार ने, ये किसान विरोधी सरकार ने हमारी जमीन हड़पने की ये साजिश।
farmers from Maharashtra who on Monday left for Delhi from Nashik to join the ongoing agitation.
ગુજરાતમાંથી પણ ખેડૂત આંદોલનને વ્યાપક સમર્થન મળી રહ્યું છે. દિલ્હી કૂચના એલાનના પગલે ગુજરાતમાં આંદોલનકારી ખેડૂત નેતાઓને નજરકેદ કરવામાં આવ્યા હતા.
Hi, hello, and welcome to the second Rate the Debate conference. It's part of the Media Mutinies conference series. The reason why it is named like that is because I think for the International Women's Day, we should focus on one of the most important revolutions which is happening right now in Indian media, being led by women journalists, which I believe is one of the most important media mutinies. Welcome Preeti, Nishtha, Shruti, and Sahil, of course. Thank you so much for taking time out and coming and discussing with us. We are all about television media. We are all about Indian media, Indian journalism, and we are all about women at Rate the Debate. So I'll now pass it on to my colleague and a very important member of Rate the Debate, Aaron Mirza, for curating this session and also the questions and the timings. He'll be taking care of that. So thank you very much and enjoy the session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kota Nilima ma'am. At the outset, I would really like to thank all our panelists, Sahil sir, Preeti ma'am, Nishtha ma'am, and Shruti ma'am. We do understand that these are really busy times. There is a lot of really good work that all of you are doing. But despite that, you found this issue important enough to take out time and be with us. And for that, on behalf of Raise the Debate, I would like to extend our gratitude and our thanks. This is our third session. We would be discussing women and farmer protest coverage, the view from the fringe. It's my privilege and honor to be introducing all of our panelists to our audience. I must take a second here to also commend and show my gratitude to our audience who have been with us since 1 p.m. this afternoon, and they've continued to stay on with us. So that shows the kind of commitment even they're showing towards these issues and the discussions that are happening. So let me take the privilege of introducing the moderator of this panel, Mr. Sahil Murli Meghani, who's a news reporter and anchor with 10 years of experience in TV journalism. He's known for his #verified series of stories on various digital platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Going a little off the script, personally, I've been following Sahil sir, and I've seen his groundbreaking stories where he has been on the ground showing the reality of what's happening on the ground. So Sahil sir, on behalf of the Raise the Debate team, a hearty welcome to you. Next up is Preeti Chaudhary ma'am. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on board. Preeti Chaudhary ma'am hosts the primetime show on India Today called To The Point. During her tenure, Preeti ma'am has led viewers through countless newsbreak stories, major news events. Her specialization lies in investigative ground reports, politics, and hard-hitting development stories. Her investigation on Punjab's drug menace won her the prestigious Ramnath Goenka Award for 2014. And something that we also did find out during our research is she has an episode specifically dedicated to detailing the farm laws from both sides of the spectrum, which you don't get to see too frequently. So thank you very much, ma'am, for being a part of this panel. Next, we have Nishtha Gautam, who's the senior editor of opinions at The Quint. Before transitioning to full-time journalism, Nishtha ji taught English literature at the University of Delhi for 8 years. She observed literary and cultural spaces with keenness in tandem with her interest in politics and foreign affairs. Thank you very much for joining us on this panel.
Thank you.
We also have Ms. Shruti Chaturvedi, who is the founder of Chai Pani, a new age startup that publishes inspiring, positive, and solution-oriented stories for the young readers. With a community of about 150,000 plus subscribers, Chai Pani has featured 3,500 plus stories and ideas that are changing the world. She has worked with leading organizations such as Sandesh News, Coca-Cola India, and Social Udan. She is a known TEDx speaker, felicitated with LinkedIn's 25 Top Voice India 2019, and humbled with the prestigious awards like the Karamveer Global Fellowship and Bill India Award. Something which very few people know but should know is that she has played a very vital role in helping the farmers protest in constructive ways, which ma'am would be explaining about subsequently. Thank you very much, Shruti ma'am, for being on board. It's an absolutely power-packed panel, and we are extremely enthusiastic to go through this journey of listening to your perspectives on the thematic issue, which is women and farmers protest coverage, the view from the fringe. So the explanation that we have given for this theme is as follows. Coverage of farmers protest by women journalists revealed how India from the fringe is. The view from the fringe is the new journalism. So now I'm handing over this entire session to Sahil sir and the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and welcome Preeti, welcome Shruti, welcome Nishtha. When I had retweeted the poster of this conversation, a journalist friend of mine, also a woman, DM'd me and she said that the poster reminded her of a poster of a TV show which was done by a hate TV channel recently, in which they had asked Bengal ki asli beti kaun, who's the real daughter of Bengal, and they had two images. On one side they had West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's, and on the other side they had Prime Minister Narendra Modi's, and she asked me that it's a topic about women. We are discussing this in the Women's Day week. We have a great panel of some very fine women journalists. What are you doing there? And I remember having this conversation with Nilima ji as well, who along with some great minds like Aaron and Kapish have put together Rate the Debate. And she said that, why is it that only women should be talking about women? Why is it that men can't and men should? For instance, why should only farmers talk about farmers' protests? Anyone who thinks that if their demands are just, if their demands are right, then we should all be talking about it, be it those who are inside the country or outside the country. Now, of course, I'm not going to be in the limelight of this conversation because it's about women. But before we proceed, it's important to set this topic in right perspective, for the simple reason, because when I threw this up, when I threw this topic up with two of my very close friends, both women journalists, one of them took offense. She said, why is it that you're still calling women as someone who are on the fringe? We have proven our mettle. We have done our job. We have proven to everyone that women are, if not equal, in some cases even better. So why are you calling us to be on the fringe? And what is this fringe is the new journalism? So I had a conversation with Nilima ji. So let me just explain the topic before we throw this open to our panelists. I remember when farmers' protests began, in the very first week, I rehashed a report that I had done in the year 2019 when I traveled to MP's Hoshangabad district. And I traveled for a different story. But when I came back to Delhi, I decided to dedicate a huge chunk, at least 10 minutes of my short documentary on one aspect. When I went to Hoshangabad district, I saw women in the fields, women driving tractors. Now recall the world pre-2020 farmers' protests and recall what TV media had shown whenever we spoke about farmers. The imagery, whenever we spoke about farmers, good, bad, ugly, whatever, you had men as farmers, men consuming hookah, men on tractors, men as speakers. But what about women? Whereas the reality is, I'll draw attention, I would like to draw attention of everyone to this fact. As per NSSO data, in 2017, 88.1% of rural women folk were involved in some way or the other in agriculture, in comparison to men who, if you look at the rural population, just 53.2% of them were involved in agriculture. So you cannot be talking about farmers' protests without the role of women. So that is why, and this is agriculture. We are talking about a sector which gives employment to roughly 41% of the workforce, the largest employing sector. So that is a reflection of how we are treating women overall. If we are treating women where they are just absent from the imagery, that is why we are saying that women, no matter what they do, are still on the fringe. Now you can agree with it, disagree with it. It's a thought-provoking, open subject. And that's a good part about it. The next line of this conversation is that this view from the fringe is the new journalism. Now, when we say this view from the fringe, in this, the fringe doesn't just remain limited to women. It's also about journalists from the Dalit community, from OBCs, from the rural community. For instance, we have Prashant Kanodia, who has come up with a bilingual online magazine, which is dedicated to the cause of Dalits, OBCs. We have Gaon Connection, which has been stupendous when it comes to bringing rural communities into the main limelight. So this is the new beginning, where you have the fringe saying that we do not agree with the conventional mainstream, erstwhile mainstream media, as I call it, where we didn't have enough representation. We were forced to be on the fringe. We were inside the system, but our viewpoint was still kept outside. And now they are challenging it. And that's why we are saying that this journalism from the fringe, where the fringe is now saying, I'm challenging your hierarchy, is the new journalism. So that's it. That's all you're going to hear from me in this conversation. And now let's peel off the layers of this very thought-provoking topic, and let's go alphabetically. So who comes first? Nishta, first to you. Before I ask you some specific questions, what are your opening remarks on the subject? Do you agree with the explanation that I gave? Do you agree with the motion of this topic, or do you disagree in your experience?
No, I would just like to add to what you said. And I completely agree with your colleague and friend who took you to task for being on the panel, and also giving the level of view from the fringe and how women are still seen as the fringe. But I think Nilima put together this panel with a great thought behind it, and as you have explained, yes, it makes sense. But then when it comes to slotting women, whether they are farmers or journalists, it has always been a very uneasy contestation. Are we still there? Are we doing as much in the field? Field as in the actual real agricultural field or the journalistic field? So I have my thoughts on it, but I'm going to share them anon as the debate progresses. But there is one thing that I want to shine the spotlight on, and something that's very gut-wrenching, and that's very, very important, and also gives us a lot of food for thought. Just earlier this week, 3 young women journalists were murdered in Afghanistan, and they were in barely 20s, early 20s. What is it that threatens people? What is it that women journalists are going to unearth, which threatens people to that extent? And before these murders, there was this very high-profile murder that had happened in Afghanistan in December, where Malalai Maiwand was murdered. Again, a journalist. Again, the question remains, what is it that women are doing differently? Are we disrupting something? Are we disrupting a certain narrative? Are women farmers disrupting a certain narrative? And Sahil, you pointed out beautifully that, where when it comes to the stereotypical representation of the Indian farmer, it's usually the man who's gurgurawing his hookah or driving the tractor. But you'd be surprised. I don't know, Sahil, if you've been looking at the Quint, and since I handle the opinion section, and I'm also at a senior position in the Quint, so I do make certain editorial decisions. And one of the things that we do constantly and consciously is the use of hero images that have women in it. Doctors, women doctors. Engineers, women engineers. Farmers, women farmers. I wish I could share the screen, but I don't think I have the permission to. But anybody could go to the Quint and check that out. Look at our farmer stories. Look at particularly the opinion section farmer stories. You will certainly find women farmers, and this is how we bring about a change in perceptions. That when women are in editorial positions, they tend to think in a way that is more inclusive, or such is the expectation. Some women do that, some women do not do that. And I'd be loath to put forward that all women think in a similar fashion, and all are sensitized when it comes to equal representation and all of that, because then we would be making the same mistake. We would be essentializing a gender, which we need not do at all. But coming to the question of whether, what women do, and particularly coming back to the farmers' protest, the kind of stories that were brought to the limelight by women reporters were more nuanced for just 2 reasons. And here I would like to quote Major General Kirsten Lund She was heading the UN peacekeeping mission for a while and retired now. And she said that, women soldiers, the biggest advantage of having women soldiers in peacekeeping missions is that they have access to 100% of the population, unlike men, because men do face certain roadblocks. Same is the case with women journalists. And when it comes to areas like farmers' protest, where where tempers are flying high, I noticed sitting in the office and talking to the reporters on the ground, women reporters could keep it very sensitive and sober. Of course, it is up for discussion that, is it still a way of essentializing women's behavior? But it's purely anecdotal from what was happening in my newsroom.
It's interesting to hear those remarks, particularly because you mentioned about how you as a woman being in the role in a senior position is leading to some change, and I'm going to come to that as we proceed in this discussion. But before we do that, Preeti, your opening remarks.
Well, Sahil, with what you began with and with what Nishtha also says, I agree and I disagree. But to begin with, what I do feel, and I feel very strongly, I think we are the fringe. I think women are the fringe. We're doing fabulous work. But when you look at the larger picture of it, I do feel there is a problem there. I would not allow anyone to tell me that we are equal or it's a level playing field. It's not a level playing field. Now, I'll just tell you, why do I say that? And, one needs to accept that to push that envelope. With what Nishtha said, she began very fabulously with the fact, and I completely agree with her, some great. So when did the weather-beaten, hardened face of the farmer actually come to light? It actually came when a lot of women were reporting human interest stories. Otherwise, what we were talking about was, we were talking about farm laws, we were talking about the government sitting on it, then we went into the whole dynamics of Farm Law 1, Farm Law 2, Farm Law 3. Nobody really showed what was really going on, on the ground. When there was a groundswell happening, the human interest stories were first initial wave of it, I would think, were brought on by women journalists. And as much, I personally feel, as much as we need to celebrate that, we need to think it's a problem. Why is it that they were brought on only by women journalists? And I'd like you to just digress a bit when you talk about the mainstream. I unfortunately am the mainstream here, so where I go. But I'll digress. Is because to borrow from my newsroom. If you remember, just about 3-4 days ago, because we're talking in the context of women, we're talking about the gender lens, we're talking about gender issues, and I really do hope we try and put the gender lens in one side and the gendered issues in one side, because content approach is gendered, and that is problematic. And that is what one needs to address. Why is it that a woman reporter will do a better long format? Why is it she will get the human interest face? Because then your gendered lens is also gendered in covering your issues. Your content is gendered. As much as the Sahil Miglani should be able to do that story, I think Nishtha's team, who's a woman as capable, should be able to bring out the same story. So tomorrow, when I sit on the table, I can fight for what Sahil Miglani is stereotypically good at, which is those hardcore political stories. So Sahil should be as competing with me on the same long format human interest story that I would be competing with you for a political story. So I do think it's highly, highly problematic. So coming back to what I was saying, like I said, we were in the newsroom about 3 days ago. I think all of us will remember, some very, I want to choose my word very correctly here, controversial, problematic, because this could invite contempt. We had certain observations that was made by the highest court in this country on women, on marriage, on issues related to women. So as controversial as they were, we were sitting with male anchors, and immediately it was like, okay, Preeti, this is your show. And I had a problem. Why shouldn't it be your show? Okay, and when we got down to what the show was all about, we actually came down to, okay, let's look at the panel. No, we must look at a strong all-women panel. I have huge problems with this, because if we are looking at not being the fringe, if we are looking at being mainstream, then I want the 9 p.m. show to be helmed by a male anchor, to have a panel which is a mixed panel. I'd rather have all men, because I think we women talk about it day in and day on and really haven't gotten much out of it. So in that context, but now, how do you approach the story? Yes, how was it, personally, when I look at it, I was mostly, because, we were in COVID time. So as much as I'm a reporter, I was stuck in the studio, but I was directly coordinating with a lot of our reporters on ground. So yes, the initial report, the initial wave, the initial burst of these fabulous stories, that weather-beaten face of that farmer, those women coming in tractors, 70-year-old woman driving the Thar Jeep, with this whole, her whole band of girls, like a go girl kind of a thing. All those were reported by women. So we were getting great stories. We were getting visual stories, a burst of color, voices, which were unheard of. They were all filed by our women reporters. What were our men getting us? आज टिकैत साहब ने ये बोल दिया, आज उन्होंने ये बोला, आज it was, and it's problematic. I feel it's problematic. And then, but it's problematic both ways. For women, how do you communicate? So these girls that I was talking to, I've reported with them and I've been on ground, and I understand for a woman to be on ground. Now let's, to come down to the social fabric of it. And I don't want to take much time, so just a minute. Come down to the social fabric. It's very difficult reporting for women. Okay, this is a farmer, this is an issue about farmers, but ultimately these are men who come from a certain physiological narrative, a social narrative, where they really don't think women are good enough. So to try, okay, I'll give you an example. To try and, the initial times, we were trying to get a panel. I had Tikait Sahab, I had somebody, remember, that Kandela Khap, that whole Khap Panchayat happened, the Kandela Khap. Now, I've seen two men. So this Mr. Tikait was the same gentleman who said, "Bhai, jeans nahi pehnni chahiye. लड़कियों को फोन नहीं लेना चाहिए लड़कियों को." The Kandela Khap actually carried out a campaign in Haryana where they went on record to say that जो गोत्रों में शादियां होती हैं जाटों की, वो अगर हत्या हो जाए तो कोई बात नहीं है. And you're trying to, and you're trying to, now they're talking sense and you're listening to them. So I think that's where your journalist hat comes on, and you say, well, right, dude, let's not get into what you're all about, but you tell me what you're talking, because that's my job. It's my job to report. No matter what I feel for the issue. Do I feel very strongly for the cause of the farmers? Of course, I have an agrarian background. I do. I feel intensely about it, but it's not my job to tell you what I feel. So I will get the Kandela guy on, and I will get Mr. Tikait on, and they will talk to us on what they have to say. So yes, net, I do feel we got to understand where we are, what we are, position ourselves, and go forward, because most of these men would rather come on anchor कौन है जी, रोहित सरदाना है जी, उनके यहाँ जाएंगे, गाली खाएंगे जाएंगे. But whatever that might be, so even they had a gendered lens. It was much later that they opened their world to women reporters. And there was one problematic incident, but I'll come back later because I'm very sorry, Shruti, I've taken a lot of time.
Very, very interesting anecdotes you have shared, Preeti, and I'm going to press you more. I would like you to share more information when you said that even panelists were more comfortable in going to a show anchored by a male anchor. If I'm not wrong, if I heard that correctly, I'm going to press you more on that. But let's first get some opening remarks from Shruti, who has been patiently waiting just because her name starts with S. Shruti, over to you.
No, not at all. Actually, I just wanted to give more time. Like, Preeti, aap aur time le lo mera, but aap bolte raho because you are quite good with that. But I think both the panelists have more or less covered the issue, and I kind of really feel bad for male anchors and male journalists because they're put in this box where they have to be super boring, labeled as objective. But one thing that I figured, like when I was covering the farmers' protest, and I did not actually go as a hardcore journalist. I just went there because I was curious. But what evolved after that is one thing that I've seen is that it's normalized talking about farmers' protest among women, because when they see somebody who looks like them, is talking like them, and has experiences that they would if they were at the farmers' protest, they kind of start getting involved in the conversation. Because अब India के fabric में भी आप अगर देखोगे, usually politics हो गया, कोई भी hardcore issue हो गया, it's mostly men talking about it. How many times do you see a group of 6 women sitting in a room in a kitty party talking about politics? But like I've had this experience after I came back after covering the farmers' protest. My mother's friends, like they have a kitty party group, and they told my mother, like, can you call her over? We want to understand what this is about, because they have been excluded from talking about this issue. So I think one thing that changes when a woman covers any of the issues for that matter is it opens the conversation among many other women, like people who are our age, who are looking like us in the same socioeconomic structure of it. So, and that also happens when a Dalit journalist talks about it, when somebody who knows regional languages talks about it, because then you are very much more inclusive.
Right, right. Do you have more to add?
No, that's
Shruti?
No.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. So now that we have opening remarks from all the panelists, let's go back to Nishta. Nishta, I was reading your report, which you had filed on Jan 26. You filed it later on because apparently your phone battery died, and it's a wonderful report. It tells us what really happened as you saw it, and I'm going to quote from that report. In that report, you have written, and I quote, "From the main road, I attempted to record a piece to camera, but it is interrupted by a protester who threatens me in Haryanvi. Don't bring us bad name by showing only this police constable who was injured at that point of time." And then you go on to write that I talked to him and my phone battery dies. Other protesters whisk him away and apologize to me, unquote. Now, what I liked about that piece is that even though you were interrupted by one farmer, you didn't make the report about yourself. You could have said, you could have gone on and on and on, not just in your report, but even on your Twitter timeline about how you as a woman was attacked. Something that Preeti also mentioned, that she didn't agree with Kandela Carp guy, but she had the understanding, that nuance of just getting that perspective, just getting that viewpoint, because she knows that this movement is different from what was happening earlier. Similarly, you knew that it's just one individual. Through the report, you have made that distinction very clear, that there are some elements, but that's not the entire farmers' protest. When I was reading the report from the prism of discussing this topic and the support in this conference, I of course said, yeah, this is a good example. I'm going to quote this and say, look how good a woman reporter is. She has experienced it her own life, where she has been misunderstood by many, and she had to convince them that, and she had to even apologize or defend herself when the need wasn't there. And so she understands that it's not black and white, there are shades of gray. But the devil's advocate, because I had to moderate it as well, said that any good journalist, irrespective of gender, caste, creed, would have done that. So help us understand, help those who are watching this understand that, does this nuance, does this understanding, does this fair, objective reporting come only because you're a woman? Or it needs something very basic, that just being a good journalist, anyone, even if there would have been a good male journalist, even that reporter would have approached the story that way. Or instead of Preeti, if there would have been an objective male anchor, even he would have not held Kandela guys accountable for what they said 4 years back, but would have focused on farmers' protests. So what is it? Is it about gender? Does it bring a more, does it bring gravitas? Does it bring fairness to your reportage? Or is it about being a good journalist? That's it.
It is, I would start by saying, Sahil, that it is both. And to begin with, my argument about keeping the objective face forward, I think that comes from a certain training where you realize that you are a journalist, you are not a participant. Just focus on the job that you are supposed to do. Journal and report. Just record everything and tell it as it is. You are not a participant. Of course, Hunter Thompson is going to disagree with me with all his gonzo journalism and the brilliant books that have come out of his experiences in various parts of the world. But I hold this principle really dear, that I am only a journalist. I am an objective observer. I'm not an activist, political or social. And I am not there to make any kind of grand changes in the society, because I will go and I will become a participant in a certain process. My job is to convey the process as honestly and as efficiently as possible. But when you say that maybe it comes to women more easily to diffuse certain explosive situations, I think that there is some truth in that, because Okay, so I'll tell you a little more about this incident, and then maybe you can draw your own conclusions. So this guy, so I speak fluent Haryanvi thanks to my constant travels in DTC buses. I mean, you can't survive if you're a Delhi University student. You can't survive without DTC buses, and you can't survive DTC buses without knowing Haryanvi. So my Haryanvi is like ekdam chakachak, khalis. So this guy, when he started off in Haryanvi and said, "Eh, tai ke karan lag rahi hai? Ishi baate man na bata." Then I switched my register since I was talking in English. I was doing my BTC in English, but I switched immediately to Haryanvi, and that came in very handy in diffusing the entire situation, because this guy sort of got an idea, if not him, because he was drunk. He was reeking of alcohol, but the others around him, they got to know that, okay, I was not disconnected from the ground. So maybe I would not paint a wrong picture. Maybe I would go 19 to 21, but I won't make a 16 into 25. That's not likely. Right, so that's what had happened. But Shruti is here and Preeti has done reporting. Every woman has had countless instances in her professional or personal lives where she has had to act smart and do some kind of jugaad. Ki boss, this is a tricky situation. Let me wrench myself out of it. Now that street smartness is this is evolution. This is pure Darwinism. If we have to survive in a situation, in an environment which is so predominantly masculine, as Preeti rightly said, that there is no level playing field. Yes, we are doing mainstream work. We are doing quality work in mainstream subjects, yet we are on the fringe, because in terms of our representation, we fall way behind our male counterparts. So when we have to survive, we learn these tips and tricks, and that opens certain doors for us. And I really wish that more men would start acting like women rather than women acting like men. That's about it.
Interesting. And I would like to thank you for speaking in Haryanvi, because I was expecting some questions to come in as demand, that we want Nishta, we want to hear Nishta speaking Haryanvi. So you have already done that. Thank you, Nishta. That really helped. Nishta, what Nishta said, I'm going to take that to Shruti in a while. So Shruti, be ready to answer that question as well, because I really want to understand, is it, especially in a field like journalism, where there is little to hide, you can hide a lot in one way, but then your work shows what you do. So is it about being a woman, or is it just being about a good journalist? So I'm going to ask you about that. But before that, I want to come to Preeti. Preeti, Nishta is an editor with a new age organization, The Quint. And since I know, we all know who really, the people behind Quint and the kind of work atmosphere they provide. It's a new age organization. But India Today is still a conventional newsroom, right? Which still borrows a lot of practices from old school journalism, from the way things function in a newsroom. Now, so take us inside India Today's newsroom, if you can, because the only glimpse that viewers get, and those who are watching this conversation get, of you exercising that power of speaking without fear in editorial conferences, is that India Today Roundtable Conference, where we see Preeti Chaudhary taking stand, and it's very difficult to outshout Preeti when she's speaking with facts, even amidst other top guns like Gaurav Sawant or Rajdeep Sardesai or Rahul Kanwal. But that's for camera, right? We all know that there is a difference between what happens on the camera and what happens behind the camera. So take us inside India Today's newsroom, and I'll tell you why I want to know that as well. Do you feel that this still, despite being an editor, a very top ranked position, do you still feel that your view is still on the fringe, and that you have to fight extra just to make your voice heard? And why I want to know that is because many people suggest that the more representation you're going to have from women or from other communities which continue to be on the fringe, it's going to get better. So is it helping? And if you can quote an example from the farmers' protest where you saw something on social or elsewhere, a propaganda from the hate factory, and you said, no, I'm going to take this up on the show, even if it goes against, even if it's too risky, because doing good journalism is now risky. So give us those examples, help us understand, take us inside the India Today newsroom if you can.
You know, Sahil, the thing about propaganda is it cuts both ways. So if it is hate propaganda, then there's an equal push to it on the other side as well, is what I feel. With what the two questions that you asked me, number one, when I say that women are on the fringe, and I will talk about my newsroom, and my newsroom, they're two very different. Women are on the fringe. And I would not let anyone ever tell me that I'm equal. I'm not. Be it in my newsroom, be it outside, be it in my house, you know, be it with anyone, you know, me on the road. It's my identity. I am not equal until the time, at least, you know, and I wouldn't be equal for many, many years from now. And once I get that and I move ahead with it, then maybe in the future, there would be somebody who can actually say that I am equal. So yes, we're on the fringe as a community, as a gender, whichever way you look at it. Now, when you talk about my newsroom, you know, Sahil, the way I see it is that we're not conventional. We are very cutting edge. And why I say what we are, I'm talking about my channel. I have been here over 10 years. The fact that I can sit there in a newsroom and you know, talk to anyone from any kind of bent of mind or anything it might be, it's very, very democratic. You know, I'm not getting into the you know, because I work here, therefore it's so great. I've worked here 12 years. There's a reason that I've earned my space to be even on this show with you. I don't think it's come at the back of those videos that you see. The fact is what I take on air is why I'm here. The fact that I can sit in a newsroom, if I have the facts, one thing I can safely say, if I can back up my story with facts, if I can do it, and we have an, you know, edit meet every day. If I can back up my story with facts, nobody can stop me from doing it. And that is something I have seen it day in and day out. Whether you choose to do it, whether you don't choose to do it on your personal level, where the newsroom is concerned, there is, you know, nobody's going to tell you, aaj rehne do, kal kar lena, ya ek hafte ke baad kar lena. As most of you, you know, like I said, you know, so many times we're sitting in our newsroom, you know, in our edit meet and we're like, dude, let's just hope nothing of this goes out, because the kind of shit that, I'm so sorry, the kind of stuff that flies in that meeting is altogether a different level. I think it's highly democratic, it's very cutting edge. Look at the kind of stuff that, you know, some of us are doing. I'll give you an example. When you talk about a particular example, you know, taking off from what Nishtha also said, I strongly believe, you know, one doesn't need to be neutral, you need to be objective as a journalist. And that is what you need to wear on your sleeve, which is objectivity. If you remember the farmers, because we're talking about the farmers' agitation, it's taken a lot of twists and turns over the course of time. The narrative has shifted like the grain of sand every time. You know, right before Tikayat cried, after Tikayat cried, before that what happened, after what happened. We've gone through various phases of it. Now, there was a time where there was a huge emotional push or an emotional quotient which was going for the farmers, with the people. And that was the time where, and you know, I'm not going to tell you what I really feel about the issue. It's not my job to tell you whether I sympathize with the issue or I don't sympathize with the issue. You know, my job is to tell you what objectively is what I see, what I report. And anyway, coming back to one story, which was very problematic, like I said, propaganda works both ways, is when we were sitting, you know, it was about 5 o'clock, and I had a very dear colleague, and she called me and she was in tears. So with what happens in a mob, it doesn't have to be a mob of farmers, like it doesn't have to be lots of farmers together. It could be a mob of men who are inebriated. I think all of us who've been on the ground know where people gather in numbers, which is a huge groundswell. You know, like Nishtha said, alcohol and sweat are two things you can smell. And the mix of that is horrible. Like, I wish it no one. And by the time you come back, you're totally rubbed into the whole scene. But having said that, so she called me, she's a colleague, and she called me. So she got felt up. So somebody, while she was there, you know, in Singhu, you've gone there many times on your own. It's easy for you to go there. For a woman to cross those various barriers, you know, we have to always look over our shoulder. Do you ever do that, Sahil? No. You have to always watch your back. Always watch your back. You know, there's I know I have mastered this art of how to do pisto cameras in a crowd. I always have one hand at my on the back. So, these are things which, it's second skin to us. I don't even think about it. And she called and she got felt up. We were like, okay, it's a one-off incident. This has all happened at the Singhu border. The next day, there were two of my other colleagues, both of them got sexually harassed at the Singhu border. It's not about the farmers' protest. It's about now 3 cases of 3 of our reporters who got felt up at the Singhu border. We had a choice, right? We could have said, what's the point of carrying? The mood is now with the farmers, because there was a point of time when the mood was with the farmers. But in the evening, very factually, because we filed an FIR for one of those girls, and very factually, we just put out, this is what has happened. There is an FIR, and now the farm leaders need to call these elements out, because this is a part of a mob mentality. It's nothing to do with the farmers' movement. It can happen anywhere, in any form of protest. But like we talked about proper, and we were allowed to do it. A lot of channels would not have gone ahead with it. Some, because it suited the narrative, yes. The others, no. It's troublesome. It invites unnecessary attention. You want to just toe the line, keep your head down. But we went with that story. And we had a whiplash, what we call propaganda, from the sympathizers. Because then we were that you are discrediting this movement. How dare you? Paid journalists, prostitutes, the other sides. So we got it, but we did do it. Because we had to be objective, we had to tell the story. And a lot of people, I had calls from a lot of dear friends of mine who are covering this with a lot of heart. And, because they believe in the cause, a lot of them on ground. And they did call me and they said, why do it at this point of time? I wouldn't be a journalist, no, if I don't do it at this point of time. So we did put out 2 shows. And we had all the 3 girls who had their story. And I don't think I don't think any woman would lie about her bottom getting. Yes. And I think all of that, even in my newsroom, it is. And I don't think, for me to sit here and say what I can, if it was any other organization, I'd be allowed to do it.
Shruti, let's go back to what Nishta said, because I think some of the questions are on that line, and I did receive some replies when I had retweeted this topic, the poster of this topic, and there were many who said that it's not about the gender, it's about how good a journalist you are. Nishta gave examples where she said it works both ways. It also helps when you're putting a piece together. What's your assessment? You're perhaps the youngest. You have challenged the conventional mode of journalism, and there is that sense of fire which gets reflected in your journalism as well. I was looking at your reel which you put out on your Instagram channel yesterday, which is your main mode of journalism, in which you had a very funny rant. It was funny, it was angry, it was everything. But I could see that what you have felt over the years as a woman, how you have been discriminated over the years. You clearly were quicker than others to understand that what was happening with farmers' protests was wrong. The way media was treating it was completely unethical. And you didn't shy away from expressing your anger. So as the other panelists said, that at times you have to keep the personality behind. You didn't let your personality be behind. You included your own experiences as a woman.
Right.
And you, in a way, gave voice to the anger of farmers. So is this the new journalism where people who are on the fringe are going to also express the kind of anger that's been residing inside them, not just because of the experiences they have faced, but because of the generations, because of their predecessors who have also faced this, and they're going to make it the focal point of their journalism? Is this the new journalism now?
So see, one, you cannot leave the gender behind. Like, it's just not possible, because just look at the internet, okay? If I am saying anything pro farmers, people who are with the government are going to call me slut. But when a male journalist does that, aapko bol denge bhadwaya and dalal, that BND tag that they use, right? Where I am still the commodity jahan pe wo dalal mujhe treat kar raha hai like they are selling and buying me, right? So the kind of trolling that happens for women on either side of it, in fact, like Preeti also spoke about it, is and especially when you are on the ground, how comfortable is it going to be for a male journalist to be out there covering the protest at night at, like say 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock and get the kind of inside stories, because they get to hang out with the people over there, which a lot of female journalists don't get to do, right? Like there is a deadline to it, you are taken to a safe space. In fact, I remember like that was really sweet on the side of the farmers, but I was going out at 11 o'clock, and so at the protest they've designated some people to take care of the safety and security of women. And this man would come and tell me, okay, madam ji, kahan jana hai aapko? Abhi aap aapke वापस से camp में जाओ, because I was staying in a trolley, I was staying in a camp, and they were like, abhi raat ko aapko nahi ghumna hai. So then I miss out on an opportunity that a male journalist will not miss out on. So that is one thing. Coming to the form of journalism, I think this is something that's going on with a lot of young people, right? Where हमने journalism को भी generally बहुत boring बना दिया है, right? That we are going to be objective, but especially when a journalist shares their experience, everybody becomes a part of that story. What happened with my Instagram, okay? Like again, like I was not commissioned the story. I did not go with the perspective of covering the story. I just went to experience the world's biggest protest ever happening, and I wanted to see how that organization is like, how so many people can be at one place and still have hardly any cases of any mishaps and stuff like that. So it started with my Instagram story, and what happens on an Instagram story is like you see it as I see it, and we see it together. And that was the kind of journalism that worked on, say, my Instagram and my Twitter, where people were part of the story that I was experiencing. And I've had good experiences, I've had bad experiences, I've had really like this kind brush-ups with the farmers, where I've felt really good. I've also felt unsafe. I've also felt where farmers and like the volunteers have come to my rescue, and I've shared all of that. So today, people who are following that journey on my Instagram or on Twitter know it from the day where I was there at the protest. In fact, when I went to the protest, I hadn't even read the 3 farm bills, because I was like, ab main journalist ka sunu ki wo farm bills mein kya hai, kya nahi. Usse acha let me go and hear it from the people who have been who have issues with it, and understand from their point of view, because I think that's the fairest point of view to be listening to. So even people on my Instagram who had no knowledge or no idea about the farmers bill got to know about it from my Instagram stories as I got to know about it. So everybody, it's like a community initiative, right? Where all of us are learning together and experiencing together. And I think that's the kind of journalism that's worked for me and my audience. I won't say it for everybody. Of course, we need objective journalism. Of course, we need like people who are just throwing in facts. We need people who are telling human interest stories. And there is a different community of people who want to feel it along with you. And that worked for me. And I think I love doing that. Like, I wouldn't want to fake being somebody who's only like giving hard-hitting facts. Like, I would love to share my experiences, and I did.
Let me know, Aaron, let me know, Nilima ji, if we have time to take questions.
We do have time to take questions, and in fact, I'll let Nilima ma'am answer.
Okay.
First of all, thank you, Sahil. Fabulous questions and fabulous engagement on this issue. I know it's very close to our heart, the farmers' protest. I think also equally critical was how women journalists were looking at it. I think Preeti, Nishtha, and Shruti have brought in perspectives which I think cover the entire spectrum of how women have been viewing this. I just wanted to refer to one point. I have been also on the Singhu border and at different times, and as Shruti said, these experiences are very different from what probably the men would experience. But having said that, I think as a woman, I have experienced something else. The extreme affection they have for anyone who is ready to stand with them. I think it was very touching. It was extremely overwhelming that they took care of anybody who was there to listen to them. Because remember that they have been on the fringe. That's something which we discussed, Sahil, that they are the fringe also spatially. Look at where they are stuck on the borders of Delhi, unable to come to the decision-making powerful center. So I think as a woman, I think somehow I found myself on probably the same page as them, as someone who has understood or who has been on the fringe herself. And as Preeti says, we all women feel that at some point or other, despite all our achievements and great work, which even if it has been accepted by the world, even then we feel that. But as Nishta correctly said, when you are there to make a decision, I think you bring in all these factors. So a woman, when she's making a decision, I think she's making a decision also for the fringe, also for the periphery, as well as those power centers when we are talking about. That's why I think that answers your question, that they have a more widespread, universal look at an issue or a situation, because I think they are women and they have gone through those experiences which are typically called fringe or periphery or non-center is what I would call that. Coming to the question of women on the at the Singhu border, that's something which each situation might be different, but I think there have also been severe attempts to discredit the farm protests. Everyone on the panel is also aware of how intensely those efforts had been carried out, not to mention any one particular incident, but we all know that from the day they started making an impact and the voices were making a difference against the fight against the farm laws, a very serious and a concerted campaign has also been on to discredit the farmers. May I now shift to Aaron, because he has been messaging me about the number of questions which have come for each and every one of you. I hope you have the time and the patience to answer at least some of them. Please do. Thank you. Aaron?
Thank you very much, Nilima ma'am. We do have a huge list of questions that I have in front of me, but because we are also running a little tight on time and all of you have schedules to adhere to, we've just picked 4 of them, which I'm sending to Sahilji right now. So Sahilji can put it forward to the panel as he deems fit. It's coming on your private chat. I've sent you the 4 questions, which are on the private chat. So you could put them to the panel at your convenience.
Okay, Kunal is asking, and this question is for Shruti. Is it easier to understand the silent exploitation faced by a farmer as a woman?
Of course, you sympathize and you understand the fight they have to put forward, because हमने बचपन से बस वो fight ही कर रहे हैं. In fact, like, we're still very privileged compared to other women who say I have met at the farmers' protest as well, where they didn't even have the kind of, like, I would never have the kind of experiences they've had all their lives. And I think one of the reasons that women have been leading this protest is also because, like, we're all tired of just being asked to shut up and don't participate here, don't participate there, don't come here. So of course, as a woman, it's easier to empathize and it's easier to communicate, because it's like a default muscle memory for us on how to fight back and how to communicate our needs properly without putting ourselves in trouble, without making somebody else feel bad. And yeah, I think so. As a women journalist, I think your lenses are way wider than and because of your past experiences.
The next question is from Kushagra. He's asked, and this question is for Nishta. How difficult is it for women journalists reporting in dangerous terrain or on any contentious issues?
There are certain very unique problems that women journalists face, but they are not unique to journalists only. So that is something that any woman would face even when she's traveling. For example, access to clean toilets. If you're in Kashmir, if you're reporting close to the LOC or the line of actual control, where would you relieve yourself, right? Or if you are on your periods, how would you make it comfortable for yourself? Right. So these are very interesting issues that we women grapple with on an everyday basis, journalists or not. But specifically when it comes to women reporting on contentious issues, you have to just look at the history of journalism. Some of the most important and some of the most dangerous stories are actually broken by journalists, by women journalists in India and abroad. I can rattle out names after names where women have actually, to their utmost credit. And I don't say that they are the ones who have done all the journalistic work. Of course, they've had male colleagues to back them. And, it is also a sort of collaborative effort. But women have always been at the forefront of bringing out uncomfortable truths. Right. So yes, it is as difficult for women as it is for male journalists, but there are unique problems, as I just listed out, but they are not unique to women journalists. They are gender-specific issues, and we are not geared as yet as a society to make the workspace an equal space for women. And I completely empathize with Preeti when she says that despite all the good work that women do, and she's bold enough to say that, yes, I feel that I'm not equal, and I understand precisely why she's doing that, because she wouldn't have access to certain stories. Forget about going to difficult terrain, difficult stories or difficult situations, or going to Kashmir. Even political stories, men can hang around at political offices, AICC में बैठे हैं या अकबर रोड पे बैठे हैं और 12-1-2 बजे तक बैठे हुए हैं और उसके बाद खबर निकल रही है, and this becomes the breaking news for the next morning. Women do not do that. What were you doing there? Oh, I saw you with that minister. Even colleagues would be rattled. And even if they're not rattled, they would pretend to be rattled. Oh, what were you doing with so-and-so minister at that point in time? What were you doing with him at that particular cafe? Somebody told me that, oh, you went out with him for dinner. So these are problems which are specific to women. No matter what the workplace is, they will have to face these issues, which is why it's not a level playing field.
Next question is to Preeti, where I think someone, if I recall correctly, now the question is gone, but I think the question was, is there any message that you want to give to young?
I can read this, Sahil. Do you want me to read this out? It's there on.
Yes, please.
What advice can you give to the young upcoming women journalists? And this is from Kushagra.
Well, I would think, Sahil, or to young upcoming journalists, report the story, don't be the story, push. And I can't focus on that enough where your gender is concerned. Push, fight. Make it that much easier when you give advice to upcoming journalists 20 years from now. Do that, open that field that much more for them so that when they come, they can widen it further. It's your job. The fact is, it's strange that we sit here and we talk about it, but for more than men, it is our job to do this. You've got to do it. You've got, like we said, the field is not going to be leveled, but keep at it. I can't, I'll give you an example. So when I started off my career with Times Now. I don't want to get in at that point of time. And the minute I walked in, it was my first job. So I had just come fresh out of college, and the editor at that time looked at me and he said, "Perfect, fashion." And I'm like, dude, I've got a journalism degree. Looking from where? Why are you? I was put in a box, and I actually did it. I did fashion for a year, and great. I like fashion, but did I want to report on fashion? No. So, and it took me a while to reach here. I would think, and what Nishta said, yes, I do agree. If I was a man, and I think we've all got to be very, very confident of our capabilities and be very vocal about what we are capable of. And if I was a man, I would possibly be doing what I am doing now, because now I am taken seriously. If I have a political story I want to report, it's given to me. But I could have done that 5 years from now. So if I'm giving advice to somebody, I want her to get it 5 years when I should have got it. So that person that she gives advice to gets it possibly 5 years after her male counterpart got it. I want to make, that's the advice I'd like to give. And yeah, I think I read Nishta's piece, always keep your phone charged, always watch your back, always watch your back. And it's sad. And hopefully I don't think we're ever going to reach a place where a woman journalist would not have to watch her back. I think that's, again, gender specific, not job specific. That's it.
Sahil, on your private chat, not in the question answer tab, there were a few more questions that I labeled. I think question number 2 and 3 are yet to be answered. So if you could consider taking them up, and then we could possibly wind up.
Question number 2 and 3. There was one for me. Why do protests of any kind give hope? And is it immaterial whether they succeed in their objective or not? They give hope because any protest is done to bring about some change. And a protest begins with a set of demands, and then it evolves. It then starts involving other things as well. I recall this even during Anna agitation. Initially, it was about Lokpal, and then it became about corruption. Now we can agree with the intentions of those who are behind it, and we can debate it, but that's a topic for a separate day. Or look at how 2012 Nirbhaya gang rape movement began. Now, people would say that it didn't lead to major changes, but then there was there were amendments. There was a new law which was brought in, and it did change the attitude. Even some people would discard Me Too movement. They would say, what really happened? Well, a lot has happened, and it's become normalized now. Speaking out, calling people out has become normalized now, and the movement also has evolved. It's an ongoing movement. It has evolved where people have raised certain questions as well, that you can't just label, you have to give some proof as well. In some cases, there is no proof. So that debate is going on. But what it has achieved is that it has given a lot of strength to women to just speak out. Similarly, farmers' protest, it began with being about 3 laws. It had other demands as well, which were later omitted because people rightly pointed out that it was getting distracting. And now it's become a movement about so many things. It's given strength to so many people who are either on the fringe or who felt that somehow they had lost the spine or the courage to speak up, and they are now speaking up, particularly youngsters. Every generation needs a movement to just purify and let that baggage that we keep on building over our shoulders of caring about the jobs that we do, caring about our household issues, where we think as a society that we need to improve it. And I think in that, farmers' protest has already achieved a lot. It's also become a movement against G media, because it's a civilized debate. I'm not using the term as it is used for that media, but it has become a movement, and it has in a way challenged the power that this medium used to enjoy. And that's why I say that this is now the new journalism. This decade is going to be about the fringe. This decade is going to be about new journalism. And this new journalism, which is largely being led by digital outlets, be it those like the Quint or independent journalists, this decade belongs to them. And farmers' protest is a catalyst. It has acted as a catalyst. And you're going to see a lot of changes happening because of that. Whether farmers' protest is able to achieve its main target, that is to repeal the laws. And more importantly, if you've spoken to farmers, a lot of farmers are here because they see it finally as something happening on their everlasting demand, which is give MSP, give a legal guarantee. It's more about that. Many farmers are more concerned about taking MSP's legal guarantee back home. So they are seeing it as that. Will it happen or not? It's only time which is going to answer that question. But a movement at times is not able to achieve its main objective as it began with, but then in the process, it ends up purifying a lot of ills that the society often gets subjected to. And the farmers' protest has started doing it. It will do more because it has crossed already a lot of barriers, all the possible obstructions that it could have faced. And now I think it's very difficult to undo it or to kill it. Everything has been tried. Every trick in the book has been tried. So from here on, it's only going to get stronger. And in the process of getting stronger, I think it's going to keep purifying, keep giving more people strength to come out. And that's why the government wants these visuals to be suppressed, because it knows that it's contagious. Once people see people protesting, there is that ability to inspire others as well. People are getting inspired, and that's why the government wants it suppressed.
I think in context of what Sahil ji just said, there is one last question which we could possibly put out to the entire panel. And this is a really interesting question. There were attempts to discredit the farmers' protest. Do you agree?
Yes.
Of course. You know, for any protest, I don't think there would be any disagreement here, because any protest is basically what is an indication that something is not right, which then makes it incumbent upon the authorities to admit and then address that, okay, something that we have done is not right, and now we have to take the accountability. Nobody wants to do that. Who would want to do that? Who would want to be told by the editor or the chief editor that, okay, you have made a mistake here? Of course, I would fight tooth and nail ki nahi boss, maine galti nahi kari hai. Right? And no matter what, if I'm a sly and a cunning person, I would want to discredit the person who is actually pointing me into the direction of the mistakes that I've made. That no, you are seeing it as a mistake because you have an agenda. Because actually I'm doing everything all right. You are not okay with it because you have an agenda. This is how you discredit any criticism, right? And silencing the critic. And when the critic also is your electoral vote bank, it becomes a double-edged sword, right? Because you want to discredit them, but you also want to retain the vote that this particular demographic gets you, right? So it's very interesting how every trick in the book was tried, yet the protests are going strong. And I wouldn't say that the protest is free of agenda, because no protest is. See, you know, it's like a melting pot. Any protest ground is like a melting pot where anybody who's feeling, discontented would come and start his or her own campaign or advocacy, whether it is relevant to that particular mudda or not. Right. So it also becomes very important for people who support a certain cause to sort of sift wheat from chaff. And I'm using the agriculture analogy here. It is very important because you definitely want to have the wheat, but you do not want your throat to be scratched by chaff. Right. So everything gets amplified whenever a government is out there to discredit a movement. So the fringe elements of a movement become the mainstream, that, oh, listen, actually it is about the Khalistanis. Listen, it is actually about the Congress party or the CPI or, other parties that are actually electorally opposed to us. So they are the ones who are fanning this fire. It may or may not be true, but it certainly is an exaggeration when they say that all the protests are motivated. No, they are not. I mean, it wouldn't have sustained for that long.
Well, no, I do tend to agree with Nishta, because, the merits of any movement aside, and if you look back in history of protest, every protest has been discredited at various junctures. And this, whether we like it or not, and this is also, I think, the longest protest in our recent history that we've seen. So right from the onset, to give you an example, Sahil, I remember covering Nirbhaya. There was the protest in Nirbhaya, which didn't last, of course, the time lag that this one has, not even close. But various attempts were made to discredit that. Let's not talk about the Anna movement, because that has enough on the, controversial, so let's not talk about that. But Nirbhaya had various attempts to discredit it. But let's look at it right from the beginning. Yes, like I said, merits of any protest aside, look at it right from the beginning. Farmers from only one country, one state. Sirf Punjab ke farmers are in, koi hai nahi isme aur. Ultimately, when the camera started going, you saw it wasn't Punjab, there was Haryana, there was UP, there was parts of Rajasthan. So farmers are there from all states. And there was a huge attempt to localize it to Punjab. I think all of us journalists know there was a point of time in the narrative of this protest that the vilification of Punjab was right up there. ये पंजाब की प्रॉब्लम है, ये मतलब बिगड़े हुए फार्मर्स हैं, इनको क्या लैंडेड फार्मर्स ये क्या करेंगे आके, ये इन्हीं पे है. But when it was very clear, very evident, because there was coverage. It's not that there was no coverage. Maybe not from a lot of channels, not from the media, but there was enough to know that it's not just limited to Punjab. The Khalistani angle. Everybody talked about the Khalistani angle. Nobody quite did anything about it. And time and time again, we would have debates where the Khalistani angle was brought up. So there's been multiple attempts to discredit it. But I do think as journalists, I do think it is, and each to their own, it's how they perceive their journalism and what they want to build their journalism on. It is, I would think, my duty to, factually, objectively put it out there. And I think if we keep doing that, we cover a lot of ground which most of us choose not to. And that could be uncomfortable for all. Even with this whole opposition ne kiya hai, if the opposition had it in them, wo kya, the lacks that we've seen over the course of now 90 days, if the opposition had it in them, they wouldn't be the opposition, no? If they can protest like this. So there's enough, to suggest that it was lots of attempts for me to discredit it, but I would reckon as a collective, journalists, it's on us to put the facts there, and hopefully whether your viewer or whether your reader would like to accept it or not, because the audience is also very colored. Whether they would want to only read a certain. Oh, yeah. Yes, it is highly colored, and we've got to accept that. Enough galis go to journalists, I feel. Your audience is as colored as your journalist. So when you talk about that, whether they want it or not, you've got to put it out there, and you have to put it out there without any hanger-ons, without any agenda.
We need to have a GOM also to decide the color codes for our citizens then. Green, white, black, so on and so forth. Shruti, your comments on the question.
Yeah, I think the most objective answer to that is yes. And I think this discrediting has also, created a lot of fatigue among people that, okay, what do we believe? What do we not believe? Ab itna hum thak gaye dekh ke ki hame kuch sunna hi nahi hai. And that's one thing that we did on Chai Pani was when we would put anything about the farm laws, everybody would come like, oh, farmers don't want to work hard and that's why they're protesting. And stuff like that, and they would try to educate me on the other side that aapko farm laws ke bare mein nahi pata hai. And then I did this live session where we put 7-8 cameras across a Singhu border, but there's something called Santi Sat, for everybody who's been there. So, and we got everybody and we were like, acha theek hai, ab aapko zyada aata hai na, aap inko educate karo. Why are you fighting with me and why are you fighting on the internet? If you know more than the farmers themselves, come and educate them. And I think that kind of changed a lot for those 10-15,000 people who were participating and sharing their opinions, and even the people there, because but yes, this discrediting has I think there is a huge news fatigue generally among people now कि अभी इनको लड़ने दो, हम अपना काम करते हैं, let's not spoil our lives. So this narrative again, it is something that the government wants to create. This is the kind of fatigue the government wants to put in the heads of the people. So eventually people should be less informed. So it's a huge thing. In fact, TV channels for that matter, why just the anchors, why just the audience? In fact, TV groups, आप Times group ले लो, India Today group ले लो, India Today के पास एक India Today भी है, एक आज तक भी है, right? So everybody plays along, everybody wants to serve the content to the kind of color the audience has. So Aaj Tak will serve to the right wing at the same time, and India Today will serve to the.
I think no, I do take strong offense in that, because I think it's very subjective and it's each to the journalist. I don't think that there's a particular agenda that either of the channels go with to try and serve. I think we try our best to cater to what facts are. Sometimes
how many journalists are catering to the facts? Times group le lo, they had a Mirror now, they also had a Times now at the same time. So, and we all know how these media groups media channels are perceived, but overall it's a huge business for whoever is doing it. I think this fatigue eventually benefits the government and anybody who wants to suppress the voices, anybody who wants to not create any मतलब शोर मत मचाओ, बस उनका लास्ट में ऑब्जेक्टिव ये रहता है.
Okay, guys, I need to anchor at 5. So can I get out?
I was about to say, Sahil, that beautifully anchored panel. I think the focus was on women and how they were looking at farmers' protest. I had so much to learn from Preeti today, from Nishta, from Shruti. So thank you all for a fabulous discussion. And I'm sure that when I was hoping that this conference will give us some kind of a course ahead, it will chart a course ahead for what to do next, especially as women journalists. I see so much material here. I see so many pointers on how to go forward, what to do. Over to you, Sahil, and thank you so much, Aaron.
Thank you, Nilima.
Thank you, Nilima, for bringing this all together.
Thank you so much for your time. All of you so busy doing such important work. Thank you.
Earnest gratitude from the Rate the Debate team to all of you. This panel, I think, although it extended for quite a longer duration of time than we planned, was necessary as well. And I would really like to express our gratitude for all of you, towards all of you, for being so candid and open about things, and for addressing the larger issue of the farmers' protest and how women, as journalists or as protesters, have molded what the farmers' protest narrative has been about. So my gratitude to all of you. We do understand you're getting late because of our delayed schedule, and we profusely apologize for the same. But if you do have 2 more minutes, we just have a very short video that we'd like to play, which is a reflection of the work RTD has been doing on the research side with respect to the point that Preeti ma'am repeatedly brought up, trying to keep media objective. It doesn't matter whether it is an institutionalized media, an individual, a new age media setup. It is important that we report and do not add additional fangs to it. So this is what RTD has been trying to do. We would like to show a glimpse of 2 path-breaking things that we have tried out. One is a media trial index, and the other is a anchor language analysis. I assure you, it's just a 2-minute video. We'd love your feedback. I'd say no more, and we'll move to the video. Thank you very much for all of your patience, and we'd be really humbled if you would ever get time to go through it and give us your feedback, because that would probably be a lot for us to learn from as well. I request Neelima ma'am to say a few words for this panel, and then
I absolutely agree with you, Aaron. It would be fabulous if this panel can give your opinion on the kind of work we are doing and we'll be doing in future also. This is very briefly what we have done. What you have seen, we wanted to compress it to 2 minutes so that we don't really take the time. But we'll be in touch with the kind of work we are doing, and do give us your feedback. It would be absolutely invaluable. Now we come to the end of the conference, and may I request Aaron and Kapish, two very important members of the debate, to give their vote of thanks and concluding remarks. And thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Kapish would be giving the concluding remarks, and then I'll take over from there for the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone present over here. So, without taking much time, I'll just begin. So, we are very thankful to each and every panelist who has been a part of this conference today. Every panel discussion that has happened till now was unique, interesting, has worked as a learning for us, each and every one of us, not just the audience, but as a team that we are working. Several questions have emerged out of our panel discussions that have made us, that makes us to introspect our thinking the way we are. Be it when we know that women is crucial in decision making, then why this exclusion? When we know that why women is not supposed to lead the boardroom, why is this question still there today in this generation or century? Or what can we change in the oxygen of newsrooms, or why is it like specifically mentioned in this panel discussion that whose narrative gets hurt when there's a talk about women farmers? So our vision for this conference has been that this day or this fight is not only about women, or rather how this fight is, it's this fight of equal partnership is of both men and women, and both of these genders have to fight it in the same manner. Without taking much time, I'm really, really thankful to Dr. Kota Nilima ma'am, especially, and the entire RTD team for being there and organizing such a wonderful conference. We'll definitely be coming with more such wonderful conferences and programs in near future. Please do stay tuned. Thank you. And you can please carry on.
Thank you very, very much, Kapish. I'm really sorry that I'm eating into your time, but I think a few more things need to be said, and they're extremely critical to be said. At the outset, I think when Neelima ma'am conceptualized the idea of this conference, we also did have a lot of discussion. And the question that was posed to Sahil about how you are a part of this panel and so on and so forth, that actually took a lot of deliberations and discussions that happened within us. And ma'am had just one thing to say: why should one gender fight for one gender's rights? We are human beings at the end of the day, and that's where it all starts. You fight for every single individual's right. It does not matter what your race is, what your gender is, what your orientation might be. And that was the idea that we wanted to bring out through this conference, and even through the panels that we have had. And I think if for all the audience who've been with us since the morning, if there was one thing that everyone did notice, was the candidness with which every single individual on all the three panels spoke was a reflective of the collective idea that we tried to bring out through the theme of this conference. We spoke about diverse issues. We spoke about digital media. We spoke about gender bias when it comes to editorial roles in the media. We spoke about how women have covered farmers' issues. And the essence of it was that do not try to compartmentalize and distinguish women journalists. It is just journalists or reporters. And I think this is the biggest takeaway for all of us, at least something that I thoroughly learned through the course of this conference, is that if it is a doctor, it is a doctor. It's not a male doctor or a female doctor. When it is a teacher, it's a teacher, not a male teacher or a female teacher. Why does it have to be a male journalist and a female journalist? Why does it have to be a male anchor and a female anchor? And I think that was something that came out really beautifully through this conference. And that probably is our tribute this International Women's Day. Now it's my turn to give the vote of thanks as well. I was not supposed to speak, but I did end up speaking. Nonetheless, I'll just move to the vote of thanks. At the outset, I'd like to thank our founder of Rate the Debate, Dr. Kota Nilima ma'am, for conceptualizing the idea of this conference, for motivating us and guiding us to ensure that this conference could be in place at the first instance. My gratitude and thanks to every single one of the panelists that we have had since the morning. We have had Abhigyan Prakash, Sakshi Joshi, Seema Chishti, Rama Lakshmi, Nidhi Razdan, Nagma Sahar. We've had Sahil, we've had Preeti, we have had Nishtha ji, we have also had Shruti ji. We do understand that especially this timeline is extremely crowded. There's a lot happening and a lot of critical issues happening. Despite all of which, all of you found this conference to be important enough and gave us the time and ensured that you stuck with us till the end of it, and for that we can't express our gratitude enough. I think this is the beginning of our association, and we are hopeful that this association just takes us further and further, and we keep connected to you. I'd be failing in my duty if I do not thank my entire team from Rate the Debate, starting from Kapish, who you can see on the screen, but there are a lot of them who have been toiling really hard, be it Kushagra, be it Ashish ji, be it Kunal Bhaiya, be it Shivashish, be it Sudhir ji. Everyone has put in a lot of effort. Our support staff, starting from Shravan Bhaiya, from Govind Bhaiya, to every one of them, Ram Nivas Bhaiya, they have made this conference happen the way it is happening. And for that, I probably cannot express enough gratitude, because these are the names that usually get lost in translation and need to be mentioned, even if it does take a few more seconds. Also, my special thanks to the research and conference teams of Rate the Debate and all the support that we have received from the Institute of Perception Studies, New Delhi. If I've forgotten anyone's name, my sincere apologies. Your contribution is there with us in our heart. That is rest assured. Thank you very much to all our audience. You've been patient listeners. You've joined with us through the entire day. This is just the beginning of the Media Mutiny series. We'll be back soon. Thank you very much. All of you have a great day. Stay safe and take care.
And I'll just add one line which Sahil sir said, let this fight or this movement be the our generational fight, which is there to purify. So every generation has to fight one. Maybe we are fighting this one. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.